Okay. Okay, I got it. Cool. Cool, neat, rad. Okay, and I'm recording now. So this is now the recording of what is going to be put onto YouTube later because I forgot to hit record before that. Oops. Um I could download just the entire stream and upload it that way, but like, eh. So yes, cool. Let me close out my Google searches before I turn it back onto the Google Chrome. Okay, there we are. Hi. Technical difficulties are over. We will now continue reading. I think I need to adjust this though. Why is it like that? No. Come on, please. Oh my god. No, don't be locked. That's the problem. There we go. That's good. Um Now I'll lock that into place. Okay. Cool. Fix that. Cool. Okay. Now I'm gonna start reading without technical difficulties. Wei Wuxian lay on his stomach for the whole night. The first half of the night was spent thinking about what in the world had happened to Lan Wangji during these years, and he only drifted off during the second half when he opened his eyes the next morning. Lan Wangji had already disappeared into nowhere. On the other hand, he lay on the bed properly, with his arms placed on either side of his body, in a position that made him seem well behaved. Wei Wuxian immediately took off the blanket that covered him. He dug the fingers of his right hand into his hair. The unexplainable feeling of absurdity and fright still couldn't be erased from his mind. At this time, two knocks came from the Jingshi's wooden door. Lan Shishui's voice came from outside. "Young Master Mo, have you wakened?" Wei Wuxian, "Why are you calling me so early in the morning?" Lan Shishui, early? But it's already 9. Everyone in the Lan sect rose at 5 and slept at 9 in a very systematic manner. Wei Wuxian, on the other hand, rose at 9 and slept at 1 in a similarly systematic manner, precisely 4 hours later than those of the Lan sect. Because he lay on his front for the first half of the night and his waist and back were both aching, he spoke in an honest tone. "I can't get up." Lan Shizhui, what is wrong this time?" Wei Wuxian, "What's wrong? I got done by your sex Han Guangjun." Lan Jingyi's angry voice also appeared. "If you continue to speak nonsense like this, you'll pay for it. Come out." Wei Wuxian spoke as if he had been wronged. "Really? He did me for the whole night. I can't go out. I don't have the face to see anyone." A few juniors stared at each other dumbfounded outside the door. People couldn't go into Han Guangjun's place without permission, so they couldn't just go inside and drag him out. Ooh. Lan Jingyi raged. "You have no shame at all. Han Guangjun is not a cut sleeve. He did you? I would be more than grateful if you tell me that you did not do him. Get up, take away that donkey of yours and train it properly. It makes so much noise." Hearing his method of transportation being mentioned, Wei Wuxian quickly climbed up. "What did you do to my little apple? Don't touch it, it's going to kick you." Lan Jingyi asked, "What's little apple?" Wei Wuxian, "My donkey." Exiting the Jingshi, he shooed the juniors to take him to his mount. He was led to a field of grass. The donkey was there, crying non-stop and making a lot of noise. The cries were because it wanted to eat grass, but a few dozens of round, white pom-poms gathered on the field, making it so that it couldn't eat. Wei Wuxian was delighted. "So many rabbits! Here, let's put them on a stick and start roasting." Lan Jingyi fumed with anger. "Killing is forbidden in the cloud recesses. Make it shut up now. The disciples doing early readings have already come to ask for a few times. If this keeps up, we'll be scolded to death." Wei Wuxian fed at the apple that was given to him for breakfast. As he expected, the donkey stopped making noise as soon as it chewed on the apple, crunching its teeth together. Wei Wuxian stroked the back of its neck as he thought about the passage tokens on these juniors and pointed at the round rabbits all over the ground. "I really can't roast them. If I roast them, would I be chased off the mountain?" Appearing as if he faced an imminent threat, Lan Jingyi hastened to block in front of Wei Wuxian with his arms stretched wide. These are Han Guangjun's. Just occasionally help him look after them. You can't dare to roast them. As Wei Wuxian heard this, he laughed so hard that he almost fell on the ground. He thought, what an interesting person Lan Zhan is. In the past, he didn't even accept them when I gave them out for free, but now he secretly raised a whole bunch, and he said he didn't want them. Who is he kidding? Oh, please. I bet he actually likes this sort of white fuzzy things. Han Guangjun holding a rabbit while keeping a straight face. My gosh, I'm gonna die. However, as he thought of the situation, of him lying on top of Lan Wangji last night, his laughter stopped abruptly. Suddenly, rings of the bell came from the western side of the cloud recesses. These rings were completely different from the ones that told the time. They were hurried and violent, as if a madman was striking it. With a sudden change in their faces, Lan Jingyi and Lan Shizhui both stopped joking around with him. Dashing towards the bell at once, Wei Wuxian knew that something was wrong and quickly followed. The sound came from a watchtower. The watchtower was called the Mingxi. It was the building in the Lan sect used to summon spirits, with walls made from a special material and incantations carved on them. When the bell of the watchtower started to ring on its own, it meant only one thing: that an accident happened to the people performing the summoning ritual inside. Outside the watchtower, more and more of the Lonsec's disciples started to crowd around, but nobody dared to go in without careful consideration. The door of the Mingxi was black and made of wood. It was tightly locked, only able to be opened from the inside. It was not very difficult to violently destroy it from the outside, but it was also forbidden to do so. It is extremely scary for an accident to happen during the spirit summoning ritual, since nobody would know what being it would summon or what would happen if someone broke in. And ever since the Mingxi was built, there was almost no cases where the summoning failed. This made everyone more worried. Seeing that Lan Wangji didn't appear, Wei Wuxian had a foreboding feeling. If Lan Wangji was still in the cloud recesses, he would have hurried over immediately as he heard the alarms chiming of the bell, unless, suddenly, the black door burst open with a bang. A white-clothed disciple rushed outside, staggering and stumbling. His legs weren't steady. He rolled down the stairs as he came out. The door of the Mingxi instantly closed again, as if someone angrily slammed it shut. In confusion, the bystanders quickly helped up the disciple. After he stood up, he immediately fell down again, his face covered in tears beyond his control. He held on to the people around him. We shouldn't have summoned. Wei Wuxian grabbed his hand at once, speaking in a low voice. Which being's spirit are you summoning? Who else is inside? Where's Han Guangjun? It seemed as if the disciple had trouble breathing. Han Guangjun told me to run away. Before he finished his sentence, dark red blood gushed out of his nose and mouth. Wei Wuxian pushed him into Lan Shijui's arms with the hastily created bamboo flute still at his waist. He went up the stairs in just a few strides. He kicked the Mingxi's door open and commanded, "Open!" The Mingxi's door opened abruptly, as if it was laughing wildly with a gaping mouth. Wei Wuxian entered in a flash and closed the door right behind him. A few disciples followed him in shock, but the door couldn't be opened again, no matter what. A guest disciple rushed out the door, shock and anger on his face, and blurted out, "Who on earth was that person?" Lan Shizhui held the earlier disciple and spoke through clenched teeth. "Come help me first. His chichao are bleeding." As soon as he entered the Mingxi, Wei Wuxian felt a dark energy come over him. The dark energies seemed like a combination of the energies of resentment, anger, and arrogance, almost visible to the human eye. Surrounded by it, one's chest would feel a constricted sense of pain. The inside of the Mingxi was about 10 meters both in length and width. By its corners, a few people lay motionless on the ground. The object of this summoning was set in the center of the array on the ground. It was nothing else but an arm, the one taken back from Mo Village. It stood on the ground as straight as a stick, with the side where it was cut off on the bottom. Four of its fingers were clenched into a fist, yet its index finger pointed toward the sky, as if it was angrily pointing at someone. The steady flow of dark energy that filled the Mingxi was emitted by this. Everyone participating in this spirit summoning ritual had either run away or passed out. Lan Wangji was the only one still seated properly at the main position on the east side. A Guqin lay on his side. Although his hand wasn't on the strings, they continued to vibrate on their own. He appeared to be lost in thought or listening to something, only raising his head as he sensed that someone came in. Since Lan Wangji's face always placid, Wei Wuxian had no idea what he was thinking about. Lan Qiren, who was originally responsible for one section of the Mingxi, now lay collapsed and unconscious on his side, his chichao bleeding like a disciple who had escaped the Mingxi. Wei Wuxian replaced into his position Turning around and stepping into the far west, directly across from Lan Wangji, he pulled the bamboo flute from his waist and lifted it to his lips. During the night at Mo Village, Wei Wuxian first used the whistling sound to distract it, then Lan Wangji attacked it from afar with notes of the zither. They only suppressed the arm while unintentionally collaborating like this. Lan Wangji met his gaze, a look of understanding on his face as he raised his right hand. A melody poured out from the Guqin. Wei Wuxian quickly joined with the flute. The song that they played was named Evocation. It used the corpse part of the corpse part of the corpse, or loved object of a deceased person as a medium for the spirit to follow the melody. Usually, only one section was needed for the spirit to appear within the array. Yet the song had almost ended, but there was no spirit being summoned. The arm seemed as if it was angered, with veins twitching visibly. The sense of the suppression in the air felt heavier. If someone else was guarding the west side, they would have fallen long ago and ended up in the same way as Lan Qiren, with their Chichao bleeding. Wei Wuxian was secretly shocked. It was almost impossible that the spirit couldn't be summoned with Lan Wangji and him playing evocation together, unless the person's soul was cut apart alongside with his corpse. It appeared that this good fellow's death was a bit worse than his. Although his corpse was chopped into more pieces, at least his soul was complete. Since evocation didn't work, Lan Wangji's fingers shifted and started playing another tune. This song had a calm melody, different than the sinister, questioning one from before. Its name was Rest. Because both of these songs were quite well known in the cultivation world, it wouldn't be strange for anyone to know how to play them, and Wei Wuxian naturally followed him. The Yiling Patriarch's ghost flute, Chen Qing, was known far and wide, yet right now, his bamboo flute, he purposefully played it with many mistakes and short breaths of air, to a point where it was heartbreaking to hear. Lan Wangji had probably never played with someone as such terrible skills before. After a while, he finally couldn't bear to continue as if nothing was wrong any longer. He raised his head to look at Wei Wuxian with an expressionless face. Wei Wuxian thickened his face, pretending that he didn't see anything, his tune venturing off even more. As he turned around to continue playing, something strange happened behind him. He turned around to look and was shocked as he saw it. Lan Qiren, who had lost consciousness, actually sat upright again. He pointed at Wei Wuxian with a trembling hand, his face covered in blood and rage, and shouted in a hoarse voice, "Stop playing! Get out! Get out now! Stop!" Before he even finished saying what to stop doing, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell down in the same place, sinking into the deep coma yet again. Lan Wangji, ... Wei Wuxian gaped. He knew what followed. Lan Qiren. Stop playing, stop duetting, stop tainting his favorite disciple, Wang Ji's Guqin notes. Their Guqin and flute duet actually angered Lan Qiren so much that he woke up and fainted again. This showed how terrible it sounded. I love that. Yet even so, the hands still drooped gradually under the combined forces of the Guqin and the flute. Wei Wuxian thought shamelessly, although it sounds bad, it doesn't matter as long as it works. Instantly, after the last echo of the Guqin, the doors of the Mingxi sprang open, pouring in a flood of sunlight. It was likely that the alarms of the watchtower stopped ringing. All the disciples who surrounded the Mingxi rushed inside, their voices calling, "Han Guangjun!" Lan Wangji pressed his hand on the Guqin, suppressing the residual sound of the string's vibration, and walked over to Lan Qiren to check his pulse. With him leading, the rest of the people soon calmed down. The older seniors laid the bodies of the bleeding few flat on the ground and started to treat them, as they used needles and medicine. Another group of disciples carried a large bell over, intending to cage the arm inside. Although it was a bustling scene, everything unfolded in orderly fashion. Everyone whispered softly, with nobody making noises. A few people worried. "Han Guangjun, neither elixirs nor acupuncture work. What should we do?" Oh, I got a message. With 3 fingers still set on Lan Qiren's wrist, Lan Wangji remained silent. Lan Qiren had directed at least 800 spirits, if not 1,000, spirit summoning ceremonies before. Of those, a lot included fierce spirits. Seeing even he was harmed by the energy of resentment, it was clear the amount of resentful energy within the ghost hand was unprecedentedly strong. Wei Wuxian stuck the bamboo flute back beside his waist. He squatted down beside the bronze bell and gently stroked the inscriptions on it. As he was thinking, he suddenly saw a downcast expression on Lan Shijui's face. "What's wrong?" "Wait, who's speaking?" "What's wrong?" Lan Shizhui already knew that he wasn't an ordinary person. After all, after hesitation, he spoke in a low voice. It is just that I feel slightly guilty. Wei Wuxian asked, Guilty for what? Lan Shizhui, this hand was coming for us. Wei Wuxian smiled. How do you know? Lan Shizhui, spirit attraction flags of different levels are drawn in different ways and have different amounts of power. The spirit attraction flags we drew at Mo Village had a range of only 2,500 meters in circumference. Yet this ghost hand has a strong killing intent, feeding on human flesh and bone. If it had been within that range in the beginning, with its level of malice, Mo Village would have been a river of blood since long ago. However, it appeared after we arrived. This means that it must have been set there purposefully at that time by someone with ill intentions. Oh, yes and no. Um, but anyways, Wei Wuxian responded, Your academics are quite strong. That was a great analyzation. Lan Shizhui lowered his head. If so, for most of the lives lost at Mo Village, we should also be responsible. And now, we also involved Lan Qiren and the others in this matter. After a while of silence, Wei Wuxian patted his shoulder. The only responsible the one responsible shouldn't be you guys, but the person who put out the ghost hand. In this world, there are some things impossible for one to control. On the other side, Lan Wangji removed his hand. The people of the Lan sect hurried to ask, Han Guangjun, how is it? Lan Wangji replied, Trace it to its source. Wei Wuxian, that's right. If we trace it to its source, find the full corpse of this ghost hand, understand who he really is, then there'd naturally be a way to save them. Although Lan Jingyi already knew that he definitely wasn't a lunatic, he still couldn't help but speak in a criticizing tone. You make it sound so simple. The spirit summoning didn't work, and it became this big of a mess. How can we possibly find it? Lan Wangji stated. The Northwest. Lan Shizhui wondered. The Northwest? Han Guanjun, why is it the Northwest? Wei Wuxian, hasn't it already been shown to you guys? Lan Jingyi was puzzled. Shown to me? Who? Who showed it? Han Guangjun didn't. Wei Wuxian spoke. The people suddenly realized what he was pointing at. The ghost hand. The arm steadily pointed at one direction. As someone changed its position, it stubbornly turned back around, back to where it originally faced. Nobody had ever seen a situation like this before, and all were shocked. Lan Jingyi stammered, It? What is it pointing towards? Wei Wuxian replied, What else can it be pointing towards? It's either parts of the corpse or the murderer who made him this way. Hearing this, a few boys who stood in the northwestern direction quickly shuffled aside, giving him a look. Lan Wangji slowly rose, speaking to the disciples. Care for Uncle properly. The few nodded. Okay, are you going to travel down the mountain? Lan Wangji, God, I keep getting these names mixed up. Lan Wangji gave a slight nod. Wei Wuxian had already stealthily shifted behind him, talking to himself in a loud, cheerful way. Yes, 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 we can finally get off this mountain and elope together. Okay. Everyone looked as if they couldn't bear to watch the scene any longer. The expressions of the older disciples were especially scary, but a few of the boys were already used to it. Lan Qiren's face seemed to twitch again as he lay unconscious on the ground. The disciples thought, if he spoke a few more sentences, baby Mr. Lan would be angered awake again. Okay, Mingxi translates into a room of darkness slash evil. Chicho, 7 openings in the head. Yep. Needles, meaning acupuncture. Yep. A long rant. Okay. Oh. Hmm. Interesting. I have no idea what is going on here, but there was drama, I guess? Huh. Interesting. Oh, what the heck? I opened something I didn't want to. Okay. When was this? Oh, shoot. When was this originally posted? 2017? Wow, wait, how many? Does that mean this book took like 2 years to translate? Oof. I'm glad that I didn't get into it earlier and have to struggle too much with finding translations. I only had to search elsewhere for some of the extra chapters when I first read it. Um, they had like just finished translating it when I got into it, which is nice. I think it actually ended. The final chapter before doing extra chapters, I think, might have been posted on my birthday, which I think is pretty neat. Anyways, um, when cultivators from hang on, actually, I'm gonna take some deep breaths so I hopefully stop like yawning before I read again. Okay, I feel like I'm still gonna yawn, but I just need air in my lungs to stop yawning. Ugh, go away. Okay. When cultivators from prominent clans went out on night hunts, there were usually crowds of people who surrounded them, appearing similar to a parade. Yet Lan Wangji had always preferred being alone. This arm was quite strange, and could possibly harm other people if it wasn't handled with caution. Therefore, he didn't bring any other disciples of his sect and only took Wei Wuxian, watching him as close as he could. Wei Wuxian originally wanted to sneak away during their expedition off the mountain. However, even though he attempted to run away multiple times, it always ended with Lan Wangji carrying him back with one hand holding the back of his collar. He changed his strategy, sticking to Lan Wangji as hard as he could. At night, especially, he would persistently climb into Lan Wangji's bed with the intention that Lan Wangji would become disgusted and use his sword to throw him away. Despite this, no matter how hard he messed around, Lan Wangji steadily stood his ground. Whenever Wei Wuxian wriggled into his blankets, he would use a light slap to make Wei Wuxian's body rigid, and then stuff him into the other set of blankets in a proper position where he would remain until daylight broke. Wei Wuxian suffered a ton of losses and complained about his sore body after he woke up. He couldn't help but thought, now that he grew up, he also became less fun than before. In the past, he would become shy whenever he was teased, not to mention that he did it in quite an amusing way. But now, not only does he remain unmovable no matter what, he even learned how to counterattack? How can this be? Following the left hand's direction, the two went toward the northwest. They duetted breast every single day in order to temporarily calm its anger and killing intent. As they traveled near Qinghe, the posture that the arm maintained to show them the way suddenly changed. Its index finger curled back and formed a fist. This meant that what the hand had pointed at was just around the area. They inquired into the matter as they traveled and arrived at a small city in Qinghe. It was daytime. The streets were crowded with people hurrying to and fro. Wei Wuxian was trotting behind Lan Wangji when he suddenly was overwhelmed by the pungent fragrances of cosmetics. As he became used to the mild scent of sandalwood on Lan Wangji, Wei Wuxian instantly cringed at the odor. He blurted out, "What are you selling? How does it smell like this?" The fragrance came from a charlatan who wore the robes of a cultivator and had the word deceiving plastered all over his face. He carried a chest, selling a few items to passersby. Seeing that someone asked, he beamed, "I sell everything. The rouge and powder here are both cheap and fine. Young master, take a look." Wei Wuxian, "Sure, I'll take a look." The charlatan spoke, "For your wife?" Wei Wuxian gave him a grin. "For myself." The charlatan's smile froze, thinking to himself, "Are you joking with me?" Before he lost his temper, another young man turned around and came over. He spoke with an emotionless face. "Do not bother others if you aren't going to buy it." The man was extremely handsome. His robes and forehead ribbon whiter than snow. His eyes were light colored, and he had. Wait, oh, they're speaking. This is like from the charlatan's perspective, I guess. "Do not bother others if you are not going to buy it." This man was extremely handsome. His robes and forehead ribbon whiter than snow. His eyes were light colored, and he had a long sword hung by his waist. As the charlatan's was a fake cultivator, he knew a few things about the cultivation world. Having recognized the Lonsec's motive, he didn't dare to cause trouble, and ran away carrying his chest. Wei Wuxian called after him, "What are you running away for? I really wanted to buy it." Lan Wangji spoke. "Do you have the money?" Wei Wuxian replied. "If I don't, you could give me money." He spoke as he extended his hand to search. He didn't expect to actually find anything, but after a few moments, he did find a delicate, heavy pouch with money in it. This didn't seem like something Lan Wangji would carry around at all. Then again, during these past few days, Lan Wangji did quite a lot of things that he never could have imagined. Wei Wuxian didn't even find it strange anymore and took the pouch at once. As he had expected, he could take anything from Lan Wangji if he wanted to, without the other becoming dissatisfied at all. If it wasn't that he had a tiny bit of knowledge about Lan Wangji's personal integrity and how good Han Wangju's reputation was, he almost doubted that Lan Wangji and Mo Jianyu had been involved in some helpless, chaotic entanglement of relationship, or or else, why would Lan Wangji be able to endure it after him going to such great lengths already? After walking for some distance, Wei Wuxian unintentionally turned around, and Lan Wangji was behind him, still standing at the same place, staring toward his direction. Wei Wuxian couldn't help but slowed his footsteps. He didn't know why, but he vaguely felt that maybe he shouldn't walk so fast, leaving Lan Wangji behind like this. At this point, someone on the side shouted, "The Yiling Patriarch! 5 coins for 1, 10 coins for 3!" Wei Wuxian, who? He hurried over to look at who was selling him, only to see that it was the fake cultivator. He packed away the low-grade Russian powder and now held a stack of paper that had someone even more malicious looking than the door gods drawn on them. He chattered, 5 coins for 1, 10 coins for 3. Such a low price wouldn't cost you anything. I recommend 3. One for the door, one for the hall, and stick the last one on your bedroom wall. With the strong, dense evil energy, it uses poison to cure poison, making sure that no evil beings can come near you. Wei Wuxian spoke. That's some shameless boasting. If it's really that effective, would you still be selling for one for 5 coins? The charlatan replied, why is it you again? If you're gonna buy it, then buy it. If you're not gonna buy it, go away. If you want to spend 50 coins on each of these, that's fine with me. Wei Wuxian flipped through the stack of the Yiling Patriarch's evil suppressing portraits. He really couldn't accept that scary faced hunky man was himself. He tried to argue with he tried to argue with facts. Wei Wuxian was a man famous for his good looks. Wei Wuxian was a man that was famous for his good looks. What is this that you've drawn? If you haven't seen the actual person, then don't draw anything, if you're gonna mislead the younger generation. As the charlatan was about to reply, Wei Wuxian suddenly felt a gust of wind from behind him. He dodged to the side. Although he avoided the attack, the charlatan was thrown off, crashing into a pinwheel stand behind the street. Some people helped him up, while others gathered the fallen items. The scene was a jumble. The charlatan wanted to curse, but as he saw the person who kicked him was a young master that sparkled all over, appearing to be either rich or royalty, his imposing attitude immediately dropped. Looking again, he saw that white peony sparks amidst snow was sewn onto the front of his chest, and he was deflated at once. Despite this, he couldn't take receiving such a kick without any reason, so he asked feebly, why did you kick me? The young master just happened to be Jinling. Crossing his arms, he spoke coldly. Kick you? Anyone who dares to mention the words Wei Wuxian in front of me should be kneeling in gratitude if I don't kill them. Yet you're shouting in the middle of the streets. Do you want to die? Wei Wuxian didn't expect Jinling to appear here at all, much less how arrogant he behaved, thinking to himself, I wonder, how did this child's personality turn this way, with a poor temper and strong hostility? He learned all his uncle and father's faults, but none of his mother's strengths. If I don't do some tinkering with him, he'd definitely suffer great losses in the future. Seeing that Jinling seemed as if it was still angering and walked a few more steps toward the man on the ground, Wei Wuxian interrupted. Jinling! The charlatan didn't dare to make a sound, but his eyes were full of appreciation. Jinling turned to Wei Wuxian, his words overflowing with contempt. You still haven't run away yet? Well, you may as well stay. Wei Wuxian laughed. Huh, who was it again that forced down to the ground, unable to get up? Jinling sneered and blew a short whistle. Wei Wuxian didn't understand the reason behind it, but after a while, the heavy huffs and puffs of some sort of beast came from afar. As he turned around to look, a black-haired spiritual dog of waist height went out of a corner, dashing straight at him. The cries of fear on the street corner came closer and closer, louder and louder. A mad dog's on the loose! With an immediate change in his face, Wei Wuxian fled as fast as he could. It had always been hard for him to bring it up. Although the Yiling Patriarch was known for being ever so invincible, he'd become a coward whenever faced with a dog. This couldn't be helped though. when he was young, before Jiang Fengmen had brought him home, he grew up on the streets, often having to fight for food with vicious dogs. After several bites and chases, he gradually became extremely scared of all dogs, no matter the size. Jiang Chang laughed at him because of this quite a few times. If he told others this, it would not only be shameful, but also believed only a few people by a few people, which was why practically nobody knew of it. Wei Wuxian almost died from the fright. As he saw a tall white figure, he quickly shouted at the top of his lungs, "Lan Zhan, save me!" Finding Lan Wangji chasing this far, Jinling was shocked. Why would this lunatic show up alongside him again? Lan Wangji had a serious personality and never chatted or joked. Even a few disciples of the same generation as him feel nervous when they see him, much less these juniors. His level of intimidation was even worse than Lan Ren's back in those days. The dog underwent harsh training, being different from the average dog. It was quite intelligent, as if it also knew that it couldn't behave rudely in front of this person. It howled a few times, then hid behind Jinling, with its tail between its legs. This black-haired spiritual dog was a rare species given to Jinling by Jin Guangyao. When most people heard that it was a present from Lang Feng Zun, they didn't dare to offend him. However, Lan Wangji was different than most people. He didn't care for who gave it or who owned it, disciplining them all the same strict way. As Jinling was using his dog to chase Wei Wuxian down the street and happened to be caught by Lan Wangji, his heart sank. It's all over. He definitely killed the spiritual dog that I took such lengths to train and then gave me a harsh beating. Yet Wei Wuxian ducked under Lan Wangji's arm and went behind him, seeming as if he wanted to climb up like a climbing pole. Feeling a pair of arms clasped around him, Lan Wangji froze for an instant. Taking this opportunity, Jinling blew two more whistles and ran off with his black-haired spiritual dog. The charlatan on the side struggled to get up, still in a state of shock. The moral degeneration of the world is getting worse day by day. How terrifying are the disciples from the prominent clan these days? How terrifying! As Wei Wuxian heard the barks gradually leave, he finally came out from behind Lan Wangji. He put his hands behind him and agreed as if nothing had happened. That's right, it's getting worse day by day. Men are not what they were in the past. The charlatan looked at him as if he was his savior and hurriedly tossed the stack of the Yiling Patriarch's evil-suppressing portraits into Wei Wuxian's hands like it was a hot potato. "Brother, thank you so much for what happened earlier. This is a gift for you. If you cut the price and sell one for 3 coins, you'd still be earning at least 300." Lan Wangji took a look at the scary-faced hunk in the portrait and did not comment. Wei Wuxian, seeing that his price became lower and lower, didn't know whether to frown or laugh. "This is to thank me? If you really want to thank me, you can draw him in a prettier way." "Stop, don't go yet. There's something I want to ask you. Doing your business here, have you ever heard of any strange events or seen any odd things?" The charlatan replied, "Strange events? Good thing that you asked me. I stay here most of the year. Known as the know-it-all of Qinghe. What sort of events are you looking for?" Wei Wuxian. "For example, evil spirits haunting around, cases of dismembered corpses, incidents in which whole clans were destroyed." The charlatan. "There isn't any here, but if you go a bit less than 2 miles ahead, there's a mountain ridge named Xinglu Ridge. I suggest you don't go there." Wei Wuxian asked, "Why's that?" The charlatan. "The Xinglu Ridge is also called Man-Eating Ridge. Why do you think that is?" "Oh, um, door gods. I see. On the Lunar New Year. That's now! Wow! That's amazing. Hey, fun fact about it being near the ox. I spent most of my life thinking I was an ox until I found out like 2 years ago that the fact that I have a January birthday technically makes me a rat. Because it was before the Lunar New Year. The Lunar New Year hadn't happened yet, so I'm actually a rat. And honestly, as far as like kind of the personality stereotypes and like type stuff goes with Chinese zodiac, I feel that more. I never liked the stereotypes of the ox, and my family's like, "Haha, that makes sense for you," and I'm like, "No, it doesn't really, actually." Which backfired because they were telling me I was stubborn, and I'm like, "No, I'm not," which makes me look stubborn. So, that doesn't work very well. It doesn't work to argue I'm not stubborn. um, Hang on. I want to adjust this a little bit. I want it to fit in the frame better. Yeah, that's better. Wait, hang on. Um, yeah, let's scoot this. That's actually. Come on, no. Let me change the size, please. Also, the music stopped. It's probably like, are you still here? Yes. Yes, I'm still here. Cool. Uh, I don't know much about the Chinese zodiac stereotypes, but I don't. I think my father was year of the dog. I think my brother is a ram. That's one of them, right? Ram's one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. And I don't. I don't know. Mm, ouch. Oh, taking a break between chapters. Mm, stretch. Whew, okay. Oh, my jaw kind of hurts. Alright, let's see here. Alright. Wei Wuxian replied, Huh? So there's an evil being that eats humans there? Having heard of at least 1,000 of legends like this and killed at least hundreds of them with his own hands, he found it somewhat boring. The charlatan continued, his voice rising and falling. That's right. It is said that the richest forest there's a man-eating castle with monsters that feed on the humans living inside it. The monsters will devour anyone who ventures inside it without leaving a single crumb behind. No corpses could be found. There wasn't a single exception. It's scary, isn't it? No wonder that Jinling also came here, unable to suppress the soul consuming goddess at Dafan Mountain. He definitely came for the monster at Xingli Ridge again. Wei Wuxian exclaimed, Scary indeed, but if nothing was left behind and no corpses could be found, how can it be known that they were eaten? After a pause, the charlatan answered, Of course someone saw it. Wei Wuxian expressed his admiration. But before this, did you say that anyone who ventures inside it would be devoured without any crumbs being left behind? No exception. Then, who on earth could have started this legend? How powerful would they have to be, having lived to tell the tale after this kind of scene? The charlatan, That's how the legend goes. How would I know? Wei Wuxian. Then, do you know how many people are eaten in the Jinglu Ridge? When were they eaten? Their ages, their gender, what were their names? Where they lived? The charlatan. I don't know. Wei Wuxian. Xinghei's know-it-all, huh? The charlatan picked up his basket in a fury. The legends don't have this kind of information. Wei Wuxian laughed. No, don't go yet. Let me ask you something else. Is the Jingli Ridge part of a Qinghai region? Isn't Qinghai the Nisex area? If there are really monsters roaming around Jinglu Ridge, why are they ignoring it? To his surprise, this time the charlatan didn't answer. I don't know. Again, instead, a smudge of disdain appeared on his face. The knee sect. If it were the knee sect from back then, it definitely wouldn't be ignored. Before the second day of the legend's appearance, the knee sect would have raided where the monsters roamed at once, in the most resolute way possible. But isn't the sect leader of the knee sect now that head shaker? The leader of Jinghe Ni sect used to be Qi Fengzhen, Ni Mingjiu. Mingwei? I don't know how to say that. I should probably check, but I'm going to say Mingjiu. After his father, the last sect leader, was outraged to death by the leader of Qisheng Wen sect, Wen Ryohan, he took over the Ni sect before he even reached 20, doing everything in a direct, forceful fashion. He was also sworn brothers with Zewu Jun, Lan Zichen, and Lan Fang Zun, Jin Guangyao. After the Sunshot campaign, the Ni sect was quite powerful with him in the lead, its influence almost reaching that of Lan Jing sects. But after a Qi deviation, he died in front of the public's eyes, and so, the next person in line for the sect leader position must have been his younger brother, Ni Huaisang. Wei Wuxian inquired, Why is he called the head shaker? The charlatan, Don't you know the story behind it? No matter what other people ask Sect Leader Ni, if he doesn't know it, he won't say anything. If he does know it, he's too scared to say anything. If you ask too harshly and force him, he'd shake his head again and again, saying as he cries, I don't know, I really don't know. And then he'd beg the other to let him go. Isn't it obvious why he's called the head shaker? In the past, Wei Wuxian and Ni Huaisong studied together, so there were a few things he could comment about this person. Ni Huaisong wasn't an unkind person. It wasn't that he wasn't not clever, but that his heart was set somewhere else, and that he used his smarts on other areas, such as painting on fans, searching for birds, skipping classes, and catching fish. Because his talent in terms of cultivation was poor, he formed his core around 8 or 9 years later than the other disciples of the same generation as him. When he lived, Ni Mingju was often exasperated by the fact that his brother didn't meet his expectations, so he disciplined him strictly. Despite this, he still didn't improve much. Now, without his older brother protecting and supervising him under his lead, the Qinghe Ni sects declined day by day after he grew up, especially after he became the sect leader. He was often troubled by all kinds of affairs, unfamiliar to him, and looked for helpers everywhere, mainly his brother's two swarm brothers. One day, he'd go to Jinling Tower to complain to Jin Guangyao, and the next day he'd go to Cloud Recesses to whine to Lan Zichen. With the two leaders of Jin and Lan sect supporting him, he still barely managed to settle on the sect leader position. Nowadays, whenever people mention Ni Huaisong, although they didn't say anything on the surface, the same phrase was written all over their faces. Good for nothing. Remembering that it happened in the past, he couldn't help but to sigh at it. After Wei Wuxian finished asking about Qinlu Ridge, he still helped the charlatan's business by buying 2 compacts of rouge. He tucked them into his clothes and walked back to Lan Wangji. The latter still didn't appear to have any intention of asking for the pouch back. In silence, they walked toward the direction that the charlatan pointed at together. There was a large cedarwood forest on the Jinglu Ridge, with a wide trail amidst the shade of trees. After a while of walking, they didn't meet anything out of the usual. Regardless, in the beginning, they didn't hold high hopes anyway, and only came here just in case. If a frightening legend of any area was true, then there would definitely have been detailed information. At Dafan Mountain, where the soul consuming goddess haunted, it was easy to find out where the victims lived and what their names were, even the nickname of Ayan's fiance. But if the charlatan was unsure of the names and details of the victim, it was most likely a case of exaggerated hearsay. But after a bit less than an hour, they finally met a setback. From ahead came 7 or 8 figures staggering towards them. Their eyes were white and they wore ragged clothing, appearing as if even a light breeze would be enough to blow them over. With their extremely slow speed, it was easy to see that they were a group of walking corpses of the lowest level possible. Not only were these types of corpses bullied among their peers, if they met a slightly strong human, one could kick over a row of them. Even if they met a slightly fast child, they would soon be outrun by a few blocks. Even if the victim was extremely unlucky and had a few gulps of yang energy sucked out of them, they wouldn't die from it anyway. Aside from how awful the corpses looked and smelled, they weren't threatening at all, and thus, if they appeared during a night hunt, most of the elders simply ignored them and left them from the juniors. This followed the same logic as hunting tigers and panthers instead of rats. Seeing them walk over, Wei Wuxian knew that something was going to go wrong, and ducked back behind Lan Wangji again. As he had expected, when these walking corpses wobbled to about 20 meters ahead of them, they saw as they saw Wei Wuxian, they were so terrified that they immediately turned around to retreat, their speed 2 or 3 times faster than when they came over. Wei Wuxian rubbed his temples around and spoke in a fearful voice. Wow, Han Guangjun, you're so cool. They were so scared when they saw you that they ran away at once. Lan Wangji was speechless. Wei Wuxian pushed him while laughing. Let's go, let's go. Let's get off this ridge. I don't think that there are any monsters. The people here are so gossipy that a few useless walking corpses became ruthless monsters in their mouths. Things like a man-eating castle must have been fabricated as well. Such a waste of efforts, don't you think? Lan Wangji only stared after a few more pushes from him. Before Wei Wuxian caught up, a series of wild barks suddenly came from far away in the cedarwood forest. Wei Wuxian's face instantly changed. He shifted behind Lan Wangji in lightning speed and squatted into a ball, arms hugging the other's waist. Lan Wangji, it's still far away. What are you hiding for? Wei Wuxian, I'm gonna... Oh, yeah, the barks. Okay. I'm gonna hide first and then see. Where is it? Where is it? Lan Wangji listened intently for a moment and responded, It is Jinling's black-haired spiritual dog. Hearing Jinling's name, Wei Wuxian stood up at once, but squatted back down after hearing a few more barks. Lan Wangji continued, If a spiritual dog is barking in such a way, something must have happened. Wei Wuxian groaned a few times and then stood up with effort, his legs still trembling. Then let's go see. Lan Wangji didn't move at all. Wei Wuxian cried, Han Guangjun, why don't you move? Move! If you don't move, what do I do? After a moment of silence, Lan Wangji replied, First, let go. The two pushed and staggered. Although they followed the barks of the dog, they only circled 2 times around the cedarwood forest. The spiritual dog's barks also appeared sometimes near, sometimes far. Having listened to the cedarwood forest, the spiritual dog's barks also appeared sometimes near. Right. Having listened to a long while of barking, Wei Wuxian finally grew somewhat used to it, at least ceasing to stammer as he spoke. There's a maze array here? The maze array was definitely created by a person. A while ago, he said that the legends of the ridge were all hearsay, but now things were getting interesting. After about 15 minutes of barking, the black-haired spiritual dog still wasn't tired out. The two followed the sound after they found the method to exit the maze array. Not long afterwards, the silhouettes of creepy stone castles appeared amid the cedarwood forest. The castles were made of grayish-white stones, its surface covered in green vines and fallen leaves. Every one of them was made into strange semi-spheres, appearing as if a few large bowls were turned over on the ground. Who would have known that there really were such stone castles in the Xinglu Ridge? It seemed that the legends didn't appear out of thin air, after all. However, it'd be hard to say whether or not this was a man-eating castle, and what beings were inside of it. Jinling's black-haired spiritual dog was outside of the cluster of stone castles. It ran around them, sometimes grunting in a low voice and sometimes barking wildly. Seeing that Lan Wangji approached, it backed off slightly out of fear, but instead of running away, it barked even louder at them, and then looked towards the stone castles, its paws restlessly digging into the ground. Wei Wuxian hid behind Lan Wangji and spoke in a pained voice. Why is it not going away? Where's its owner? Why is its owner gone? Upon hearing the barks, until now they hadn't heard anything coming from Jinling at all, not even cries for help. This black-haired spiritual dog must have been brought here by him, and it must have been the one who broke the maze array as well. Yet, it seemed as if a living person just disappeared like that. Lan Wangji spoke. Let us go inside to see. Wei Wuxian, how? There's no door! There really wasn't a door. The gray white stones were stuck tightly together without any space for doors or windows. The dog yelped as it leaped and looked as if it wanted to bite the corner of Lan Weiji's robes, but it didn't dare to do it. So it went around to bite Wei Wuxian's clothes instead, tugging him to a certain direction. Wei Wuxian's soul almost flew out of him. He extended his arms toward Lan Wangji. Lan Shan, Lan Shan, Lan Shan, Lan Shan, Lan Shan, Lan Shan. The dog dragged Wei Wuxian, and Wei Wuxian dragged Lan Wangji. The dog led them halfway around to the back of the stone castle. To his surprise, there was an entrance about a person's height in the wall. The shape was uneven, and there were fragmented pieces of rocks on the ground, which meant that it had been violently blasted open with the use of a magical tool. The inside of the entrance was too dark for anything to be seen, aside from a red light that faintly shone. The dog loosened its teeth and made another series of barks towards the inside and madly wagged its tail at the two of them. It was clear that Jinling must have broken open the stone castle by force, but something happened to him after he entered. Bishan unsheathed on its own by an inch. The blade of the sword emitted a cold glow of blue light, illuminating the dark path ahead. Lan Wangji bent down and went inside first. Wei Wuxian was almost stirred crazy by the dog and rushed inside as well. Nearly crushing into him, Lan Wangji held his hand to support him and shook his head. Either out of dissatisfaction or unwilling resignation, the black-haired spiritual dog appeared like it really wanted to follow him, and also tried to rush inside, but it seemed as if it was blocked out by some sort of a force. It couldn't break the border. It couldn't break the barrier, no matter how hard it tried. So it could only sit down outside of the entrance, its tail wagging faster and faster. Wei Wuxian was so glad that he almost knelt down for it. Taking his hand away, he walked a few steps inside. The distant shade of light blue coming from the sword almost appeared to be white when surrounded in this darkness. The Xinglu Ridge was covered in a tall, deep forest, so it was quite chilly. In the inside of the stone castle, it was colder than it was outside. Wearing only light clothing, there was a wind blowing through Wei Wuxian's cuffs and behind his back. The cold sweat due to the dog had already dried. The light at the entrance had disappeared, as if it was a candle having been snuffed out. The deeper they went inside, the darker and more spacious it became. The top of the stone castle was spherical. Wei Wuxian kicked a few pieces of rock off the ground. He could hear a slight echo. He finally couldn't endure it any longer and stopped in his tracks, pressing his right hand on his temple and scrunching his eyebrows. Lan Wingji turned around to ask, "What happened?" Wei Wuxian replied, "It's so loud." Inside the stone castle, there was only dead silence. It was as quiet as a cemetery. Actually, it itself also seemed similar to a cemetery, but in Wei Wuxian's ears right now, they were already surrounded by noise. Yep, I understand those words. Um, the next chapter, please. Whew, probably only a couple more chapters to get through this. You know, the castle thing. The noise came from all around them. It was an ocean of whispers, rustles, and giggles, from in front and behind, above and below. The voices involved both male and female, old and young, loud and quiet. Wei Wuxian could even hear a few fragmented sentences, but they came and went, not allowing him to catch any specific words. It really was too loud. Wei Wuxian continued to press on his temple with one hand and used the other to grab a palm-sized compass of evil from the Jianqian bag. The pointers of the compass shakily spun 2 times, then started to spin faster and faster. A few moments later, it spun madly around. Last time on Dafan Mountain, it had already been strange when the compass of evil didn't find the direction. This time, it went as far as to spin all by itself without pausing for a single moment. This situation was even more unbelievable than the pointers not moving at all. The foreboding shadow in Wei Wuxian's heart grew denser. He called out, "Jinling!" The two had already walked for a while inside the stone castle, but they hadn't seen anyone. Wei Wuxian had shouted a few times without receiving any reply. The first stone rooms were all empty, but as they went in deeper, the center of the one of the rooms there was a black coffin. It was quite odd for a coffin to appear here. However, the wood used was a deep black, and the shape was also crafted in a skilled way. Seeing this, Wei Wuxian had exceptionally strong affinity toward it, but he couldn't help but pat it a few times. The wood was sturdy, and the sound was firm. He praised it. What a nice coffin. Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian stood on opposite sides of the coffin. After passing a look between them, they extended their arms at the same time and opened the lid. The moment the lid was open, the noise around them suddenly multiplied, flooding through Wei Wuxian's ears in the manner of tidal water. It was as if, before this, they were secretly watched by countless pairs of eyes. The owners of the eyes silently monitored and discussed every word they spoke, every action they performed, suddenly became agitated as they saw that the coffin was about to be opened. Wei Wuxian thought of a few dozen possibilities, already prepared to fend against the strong odors of rancidity. Stretching clouds of monsters and overflow of poisonous water, toxic smoke that dispersed quickly, or attacks from resentful species. Of course, his greatest wish was to see Jin Ling. Despite this, nothing happened. Nothing. Surprisingly, this was an empty coffin. Wei Wuxian was a bit startled, but also a bit disappointed at the fact that Jinling wasn't stuck in here. Lan Wangji went slightly nearer. Bishan sheathed itself by a few inches, its cold light shining on the bottom of the coffin. Only then did Wei Wuxian notice how it wasn't that the coffin was empty, but that the object inside was a lot smaller than what he had expected, and hid inside the deepest part of the coffin. Inside the coffin there lay a long sword. The sword had no sheath. The hilt seemed to have been casted from gold, appearing to be quite heavy in weight. Its body was slender, and its blade shone, resting on a layer of red cloth at the bottom of the coffin. It reflected a bloody shade of scarlet, emitting a chilly air of destruction. The sword was put inside a coffin instead of a corpse, but there really wasn't anywhere not particular about these stone castles in the Jinyu Ridge, revealing mysteries every step they took. The two closed the coffin lid and continued walking. They found other coffins like this in some other rooms. Looking at the texture of the wood, their ages were all different, and within every coffin there was a longsword. They even went inside the last room. There wasn't any trace of Jinling. Wei Wuxian closed the coffin lid, feeling slightly worried. Seeing his knitted eyebrows, Lan Wangji thought for a moment, put the guqin horizontally on the coffin, and raised his hand. A melody poured through his fingers. He only played a short excerpt and then took his right hand away from the guqin and stared attentively at the still vibrating strings. Suddenly, the strings quivered, and one note sounded on its own. Wei Wuxian asked, "Inquiry?" Inquiry was a famous piece composed by an answer of the Gusulan sect. Different from evocation, it was used when the victim's identity was unknown and there wasn't a medium. The player used notes of the Guchin to inquire, asking questions to the victim, while the victim's answers would be transferred into melodies by playing inquiries shown on the strings. If the strings vibrated on their own, it meant that Lanwangji had already brought a spirit in the castle here. After this, the two would start answering using the language of the Guchin. The language of the Guchin was a special unique skill to the Guzulan sect. Although Lan Wangji knew a wide variety of things, there were still some things he was unable to learn, such as the language of the Guchin. He whispered, Guangjun, help me ask what this place is, what it's for, and who built it. As he whoops. As he mastered the language without any hesitation, Lan Wangji confidently played a few limpid tones. After a few moments, the string played back notes on their own. Wei Wuxian quickly asked, what did it say? I do not know. What? It said, I do not know. Wei Wuxian looked at him, suddenly remembering a conversation about whatever a few years ago. Touching his nose, he was at a loss for words, and thought, Lanjan is so bright, he even learned how to make me speechless. With a f- with the first question unanswered, Lanwangji played another sentence. The strings responded again with the same two notes as before. Wei Wuxian could tell this time that the answer was, I don't know, as well. He asked, what did you ask it this time? Lanwangji, how it died. Wei Wuxian, if it was secretly called when it was not paying attention, that explained why it didn't know how it died. Why don't you ask if it knows who killed it? Lanongji raised his hands to play another phrase, yet the answer was the same two notes. I don't know. It was a spirit who had been trapped here, yet didn't know where this was, how it died, and who killed it. This was also Wei Wuxian's first time meeting such a deceased person. With a change of thought, he spoke again. Then let's ask something else. Ask him whether it's a man or a woman. There's no way that it doesn't know this. Lan Wangji did as he was told. He took away his hands. Another string sounded in a strong way. Lan Wangji translated, a man. Wei Wuxian, we finally know something, huh? Ask whether or not a boy of 15 or 16 entered here. It asked, yes. Wei Wuxian asked again, then where is he right now? The strings paused for a moment, then replied. Wei Wuxian hurried to ask, what did he say? Lan Wangji's face was solemn. It said, right here. Wei Wuxian was dumbfounded. Here? Probably referring to the stone castle. But before this, they searched through the whole place and hadn't seen Jinling. Wei Wuxian spoke. It can't lie, right? Lan Wangji, I am here, so it cannot. Indeed, it couldn't. The person inquiring was Han Guangjun. Under his control, the spirit who came was unable to lie, and definitely had been answering the truth. Wei Wuxian proceeded to search around this room, looking for any mechanisms or secret rooms that he had missed. After a thinking moment, he played a few more notes, phrases. However, after he received the answer, his expression changed slightly. Seeing this, Wei Wuxian asked, what did you ask this time? Lan Wangji, how old he was, where he was from. Both of these questions were attempts to find out the identity of the spirit. Wei Wuxian knew that he definitely received some sort of an unconventional answer. How was it? Lan Wangji, 15, from Lan Ling. Wei Wuxian's expression changed as well. The soul that inquirer had found was Jin Ling? He listened intently amid the noise and seemed to have bombarded here. There really seemed to be a few weak shouts coming from Jin Ling. They were faint, however, and indistinct. Lan Wangji continued to ask. Wei Wuxian knew that he was asking for the precise location, so he stared fixedly at the strings of the Guqin, waiting for Jinling to answer. This time the answer came a bit slower. After he finished listening, Lan Wangji spoke to Wei Wuxian. Stand it where you are, face the southwest, and listen to the strings. After each note is played, walk one step forward. When the sound stops, it will be right in front of you. Without saying a word, Wei Wuxian turned toward the southwest. Behind him came 7 notes of the Guqin, so he walked 7 steps forward. However, nothing had appeared in front of him. The notes continued, but the pause between them grew longer and longer, and he also walked slower and slower. Another step, and another, and another. After the 6th step, the Guqin finally silenced. No more notes sounded, and before him there was a wall. The wall was made of white-gray brick rocks, pieced together tightly. Wei Wuxian turned around. He's in the wall? Bishan unsheathed. 4 streaks of blue light swept past, and a neat pound sign had been carved into the wall. The two went forward to take apart the bricks. After removing some of them, a large sheet of black dirt was exposed. It seemed that the stone castle was made to be double layered, filled with dirt between the 2 layers of hard rock. Using his bare hands, Wei Wuxian dug out a large chunk of dirt, surrounded the coal black dirt, there was a human's face, eyes tightly shut. It was the missing Jinling. Having his face enveloped in dirt, as soon as it appeared, air poured into Jinling's mouth and nose. He immediately started to cough and breathe. As Wei Wuxian saw that he was still alive, his heart finally calmed. Jinling did almost die, or else inquiry wouldn't have caught the still alive soul that was about to leave his body. The only good the good thing was that only a short while passed after he was buried into the wall. If it took them any longer, he would have suffocated to death. The two hastened to dig him out of the wall. However, who knew that, as if dirt clung onto a carrot being pulled out of the ground, the moment Jinling's upper body emerged from the dirt, the sword on his back caught onto something else and dragged it out. It was the ashen bone of a human arm. Lan Wangji laid Jinling flat onto the ground and felt for his pulse. Wei Wuxian, on the other hand, took up the sheath of Bishan and skillfully started to poke around the dirt, following the length of the bone. After a short while, a complete skeleton appeared before their eyes. This skeleton was the same as how Jinling had looked, buried inside the wall in a standing position with ghastly pale bones and pitch black dirt. The contrast was distinct, yet glaring to the eye. Wei Wuxian dug a bit more through the ground and broke away a few pieces of brick on the side. After some more wrestling around, sure enough, he found another skeleton nearby. This one hadn't completely decayed yet. There was still some flesh on the bones, and long, messy hair on the skull. From the ragged clothing and the shade of the watered down red, he could tell that this was a woman. However, she wasn't standing, with her skeleton bending down. The reason of this was that there was a third skeleton beside her, squatting down by her feet. Wei Wuxian stopped digging further. He took a few steps back. The noise in his ears was wild and turbulent as tidal waves. He could almost be sure of it. The inside of the stone castle's thick walls was packed with human corpses. Above, below, south, east, northwest, standing, sitting, lying, squatting. Just what on earth is this place? What? Oh. Okay, sword, but it's actually more like a knife. No, he should be 13, actually. Yeah, I don't fucking know. How is he where did those 2 years come from? Wei Wuxian was dead for 13 years. Supposedly Jinling was only about a month old. How is he that old? That doesn't make any sense. Ugh, I guess I don't know. Maybe MXTX doesn't know how to do math. I can't believe MXTX doesn't know how math works. Wow. Maybe it'll make more sense once we get to the flashbacks about Jinling's birth and such. But, like, I don't know how he could be 15. I think it said earlier that he's supposed to be close to 15, so he's actually 14. I don't know. I just, I'm just, I'm just gonna stick with the idea that MXTX can't do math now because it's confusing. Um, I think MXTX should make timelines of their books because it's very confusing. um, in all of the books, it's like confusing about the timeline. Anyways, oh shit, this is a new section, but this would be a cliffhanger, so I'm not gonna stop yet. They gotta get through this. They gotta get back to the inn, at least. Maybe have a conversation with a certain angry sex leader. Um, okay. At this moment, the unconscious Jinling suddenly sat up. In front of the two, he clumsily stood up with eyes closed. Wei Wuxian wanted to see what he was going to do, so he didn't do anything as Jinling slowly walked around him, took one stride, and stepped back into the wall where he stood just a while ago. He placed his arm flat beside his body, even the position was the same as before. Wei Wuxian pulled him out of the wall again, feeling that the situation was both hilarious and strange. As he was about to tell Lan Wangji that it was best not to stay here for long, he suddenly quivered out of fright, hearing a few barks that came from afar. Ever since they went in, the Black-haired spiritual dog behaved itself, wagging its tail as it sat before the entrance and waited for them to bring back its master in an anxious yet pathetic way, without barking anymore. However, right now, its barks were fiercer than ever. Lan Wangji spoke. Something is wrong outside of the castle. As he reached out to help Jinling, Wei Wuxian beat him to it and carried Jinling up on his back. Let's go out and see. The two quickly went back in the same way they came. Bending down to exit, they saw the spiritual dog face them with its back, growling with the bottom of its throat at a certain direction. Although Wei Wuxian managed to come over, he really couldn't bear this type of sound, and involuntarily took a few steps backward. When the dog turned around and saw that he had Jinling on his back, it instantly dashed over, causing Wei Wuxian to scream. Lan Wangji shifted in front of him just as he was about to throw Jinling down. The spiritual dog immediately stopped, its tail between its legs again. The reason why it didn't stick its tongue out was that it held something inside its mouth. Lan Wangji went forth, bent down, and took out a scrap of cloth from between its teeth and handed it over to Wei Wuxian. It seemed like it was a part of a piece of clothing. Before this, there must have been someone either roaming or spying around the area, and they must have appeared suspicious, or else the dog's barks wouldn't have been teeming with hostility. Wei Wuxian declared, "They haven't gone far yet. Let's go after them." Yet Lan Wangji responded, "That is not necessary. I know who they are." Wei Wuxian, "I also know. It must have been the same group of people who spread the rumors of Xinglu Ridge, let out the walk-in corpses, set up the maze array, and built the stone castles, and those sabers. But if we don't catch them now, it'll be a bother to find them later." Lan Wangji, "I will go after them. What about you and Jinling?" Wei Wuxian, "I'll take him down Xinlu Ridge and settle down somewhere in Qinghe around where that we met that charlatan. Let's meet up there." The pace of the conversation was extremely fast. Lan Wangji only paused for a moment, and Wei Wuxian had to go. Later, and the person would have run away. "I'll be back." Hearing the "I'll be back," Lan Wangji took one look at him and walked off without any more words. The spiritual dog wanted to throw itself over again. Wei Wuxian immediately shouted, Wait! Take the dog away! Take it!" Lunging, Lan Wangji had come back again and looked down at the black-haired spiritual dog. Too scared to put up any resistance, it yapped as it trailed behind Lan Wangji, turning around to look at Jinling once in a while. Wei Wuxian wiped a few drops of sweat from his forehead. After he looked at the group of white castles once more, he picked up Jinling again and went down Xinglu Ridge. At the moment, it was already near dusk. With the boy on his back and both of them covered in dirt, they received a lot of attention from passerbys. Wei Wuxian went back to the street where Jinling used the dog to chase him, and found an inn. Using the money he fished out of Lan Wangji, he bought 2 new outfits and got a room. He took off Jinling's sector, which had been crumpled after it was buried in dirt, then pulled off his boots, and suddenly his movements came to a halt. There appeared to be an area of a shadow on Jinling's lower leg. Squatting down and rolled up the boy's trousers, Wei Wuxian discovered that this wasn't a shadow, but a black bruise. And it wasn't a bruise that came from being injured, it was a curse mark. A curse mark was a thing made by an evil being on its prey. If it appeared, it meant that the person had offended something of extreme malice. If it left a dark mark. Um, that's not what I meant to say. It would find you no matter what, possibly after a long time, and possibly tonight. The consequences ranged from having the body part with the marking be taken away, or just death. Jinling's whole leg had turned black, and the bruise was stretching upwards. Wei Wuxian had never seen a curse mark in such intense shade of black and covering such a large area. The more he looked at it, the sterner his face grew. He put Jinling's leg down under Jinling's undergarment. He only felt relief after he saw that his chest and stomach areas were all clean, not affected by the curse mark yet. At this moment, Jinling opened his eyes. He was confused for quite a while. With his body naked and cold all around, he came to at once. He immediately got up and roared with a flushed face. What are you doing?" Wei Wuxian grinned. "Oh, hey, you're awake." Appearing as if he had encountered a great shock, Jinling shut the front of his undergarment and shrunk toward the corner of the bed. "What do you want? Where are my clothes? Where's my sword? Where's my dog?" Wei Wuxian spoke. "I was just about to put on your clothes for you." His expression and tone were as kind as those of a grandmother who wanted to put on a jacket for her grandson. Jinling leaned against the wall with disheveled hair. "I'm not a cut sleeve," Wei Wuxian beamed. "What a coincidence! I am!" Jinling snatched the sword that lay beside them beside the bed in a manner so courageous that it seemed as if Wei Wuxian walked one more step forward, he could kill him and then commit suicide to prove his innocence. Wei Wuxian finally managed to stop laughing. Why are you being so scared? It was only a joke. I spent so much effort to dig you out of the wall, and you don't even thank me. Amid the ruckus, Jinling combed his hand through his messy hair so that it looked a bit more decent and continued to rage. If not for this, the fact that you dared to take off my clothes would have gotten you killed 1,000 of times. Wei Wuxian, please don't. Dying once was already painful enough. There, put down the sword. I, I don't think that's something you should be admitting right now, but okay, let's just admit that you've already died before. With a muddled look, Jinling did as he was told and put the sword down. When they played Inquiry, although Jinling's soul left his body, he couldn't remember a lot of things. Amid the haze, he knew that the person in front of him who dug him out and carried him down the mountain. For some time, after he was buried in the wall, he had been conscious for a while, the fear and despair in his heart at their height. Yet he really didn't expect that the one who freed him from his fear and despair was the person who he had hated ever since the first time they met. The color of his face switched back and forth between white and red. He was also both dizzy and embarrassed, his thoughts still fluttering everywhere. Suddenly, his eyes went towards the window, and was shocked to see that the sky was already dark. With a few stars scattered here and there, coincidentally, Wei Wuxian bent down to pick up the new clothes that fell on the ground. Jinling hopped off the bed and put on his boots, grabbed his jacket, and sprinted out of the room. Wei Wuxian originally thought that after going through so much, he would probably stay listless for a while. Who knew that young people were so energetic? As he disappeared into the distance like a gust of wind, remembering the curse mark on his leg was no trivial matter. He quickly shouted, "What are you running away for? Come back!" Jinling ran as he put up his soiled, crumpled robe. "Don't follow me!" He was light on his feet and stepped out of the inn in a few long strides. After chasing for a few blocks, Wei Wuxian actually lost him. After searching for a while, twilight came, and the people on the street were also lessened. Wei Wuxian was quite annoyed. Damn, how can this child do such a thing? As he was about to give up, the angered voice of a young man came from in front of him, at the far end of the street. "I only said a few things about you, and you disappeared into nowhere. Are you some young mistress? Your temper is growing worse and worse." Chung Chung! Wei Wuxian immediately slid into an alleyway. A second later, Jinling's voice also appeared. "I already came back with nothing wrong with me, didn't I? Stop nagging." It appeared that Jinling didn't come to Qinghe alone. Well, no wonder. Last time at Dafan Mountain, Zhang Chang had also been there to assist him, so why wouldn't he have come this time? However, looking at this now, it seemed as if the two had had a quarrel in the town of Qinghe, which is why Jinling went up the Jinlu Ridge alone. The reason why he hastened to run away was probably that Zhang Chang threatened to do something if he didn't come back before dark or something like that. Jung Chung, nothing wrong? You look like you just rolled around in a muddy ditch, and you say there's nothing wrong with you? Don't you think that's an embarrassment to be wearing your sex uniform? Hurry back and change into something else. Speak! What did you run into today? Jinling replied impatiently. I already said that I didn't run into anything. I tripped, and it was a waste of time. Ow! He shouted. Don't tug on me like that. I'm not 3 years old. Zhang Chang spoke in a harsh tone. Is it that you think that I can't discipline you any longer? Tell me that Let me tell you that, even if you're 30, I'd still be able to tug you. Next time, if you dare run around without telling anyone again, what I'll whip weights upon you. Jinling, I went alone exactly because I didn't want anyone to help or discipline me. Wei Wuxian considered. I don't know about anything else, but Zhang Chang was quite right when he scolded that Jinling had the temper of a young mistress. Zhang Chang, so what now? What did you catch? Where's that spiritual dog that your uncle gave you? It was chased into some random corner by Lan Zhan. Just as Wei Wuxian was thinking, two familiar barks came from the other side of the alley. Wei Wuxian's demeanor changed at once, legs moving on their own. He rushed outside as if he was chased by poisonous arrows. The black-haired spiritual dog sprinted over on the other end, past Wei Wuxian, and threw itself towards Jinling's legs, affectionately brushing him with its tail. The dog appeared there. It must have meant that Lan Wangji had already caught whoever was spying near the stone castles and went to the point of rendezvous that they had settled on earlier. However, at the moment, Wei Wuxian had no time to think about these things. As he ran, he just happened to end up right before Zhang Chang, Jin Ling, and a bunch of other Zhang sect disciples. After both sides stayed still for a moment, Wei Wuxian silently turned around and fled. Having managed a short distance, he heard a sizzling noise, and a purple electric current wrapped around his lower leg as if it was a snake. Numbness and pain surged through his body from bottom to top, and he fell at once after a pull from behind. Then someone picked him up with the back of his collar. Wei Wuxian immediately tried to find the spirit locking bag, but the other grabbed it before him. Chang Chang walked a few steps while holding him, entered the nearest shop, and kicked open the wooden bolt that was already half latched. The owner was getting ready to close shop for the night. Suddenly, seeing that a fancy-clothed, dark-faced young man kicked open the door and walked inside with someone in his hand, appearing as if he was going to disembowel the victim right there, the owner was so frightened that he couldn't speak. A disciple went up and whispered a few things in his ear. With some silver pushed into his hands, he quickly fled to the back of the hall and never came out again. Without any further instructions, the Zhang sect's disciples instantly spread out from the inside to the outside, making it so that nothing could enter or escape the place. Jinling stood on the side, seeming as if he wanted to say a few things, but was too shocked to do so. Zhang Chang glowered at him. "I'll take care of you later. Stay here!" From the beginning of his memory until now, Jinling had never seen such a look on Zhang Chang's face before. This uncle of his, who led the prominent Yunming Zheng sect ever since a young age, had always been cold and dark when he spoke. He was willing to neither show mercy nor do good. Yet right now, although he was trying hard to suppress unnecessary facial expression, his eyes were alarmingly intense. Although his face had always been clouded, marked with arrogance and satire, it seemed as if every corner of it had come alive. It was difficult to determine whether it was vengeful wrath, fathomless hatred, or raving ecstasy. How long have I been reading for? Bit over an hour. Keep going. Zhang Chang added, "Lend me your dog." Jinling pulled himself out of the daze. He hesitated for a moment and only whistled after Zhang Chang shot him two lightning-sharp beams from his eyes. The dog dashed over in just a few leaps. Wei Wuxian, body as stiff as an iron board, could only be dragged forward, walking one step at a time. Zhang Chang found an empty room and threw Wei Wuxian inside, closing the door behind him. The dog followed them inside and sat by the door. Wei Wuxian had his eyes tightly locked on it, afraid that it would pounce at him at the next possible moment. Remembering how he'd been controlled in just a short amount of time, he exclaimed in his heart that Zhang Chang really knew the best way to deal with him. Meanwhile, Zhang Chang slowly sat down by the table and poured himself a cup of tea. For a moment, no one spoke a word. The cup of tea was still steaming hot. Without having a single sip of it, he hurled it to the ground. Zhang Chang pulled a curt smile on his face. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Growing up, Zhang Chang had seen Wei Wuxian's awful state countless times as he ran away from dogs. Others may have believed him if he denied it, but in front of someone who knew him so thoroughly, it'd be impossible to argue. This was an obstacle harder to overcome than Zidian. With a sincere tone, Wei Wuxian replied, "I don't know what to say to you." Zhang Chang whispered, "You really don't learn, do you?" Ever since long ago, their conversations had been full of retorting and arguing. Wei Wuxian blurted out with thinking, "And you've not made any progress either." Zhang Chang laughed from the anger. "Sure, then let's see which of us is the one who hasn't made any progress." Remaining seated on the table, he shouted in a commanding way. The dog stood up immediately. Being in the same room as it already made Wei Wuxian sweat in uneasiness. Seeing that the large, snarling dog closed in on him in less than a second, his ears were full of its low howls, and his body immediately numbed. He had forgotten about how much of his early years wandering the street. The only things that he remembered still was the terror he felt as he was chased by dogs, and the slicing pain of teeth and claws digging into his flesh. The fear that had been planted deep within his heart couldn't be overcome or eased, no matter how hard he tried. Suddenly, Zhang Chang glanced sideways at him. Whose whose name did you call?" Wei Wuxian was in such a state of distress that he couldn't remember whether or not he called someone's name at all. He only managed to pull himself together after Zhang Chang commanded the dog back away. After a moment of hesitation, he abruptly turned his head away. On the other hand, Zhang Chang left his seat. There was a whip attached beside his waist, with one hand on it. He bent down to look at Wei Wuxian's face. After a pause, he straightened up. "Speaking of it, since when have you been so close to Lan Wangji?" Wei Wuxian immediately understood whose name he had unconsciously called out. Zhang Chang smiled menacingly. "It really is quite curious how far he went to protect you back on Dafan Mountain." A moment later, he corrected himself. "No, You weren't necessarily the one whom Lan Wangji was protecting. After all, the Gusulan sect couldn't have forgotten what you did with that loyal dog of yours. How could someone so celebrated for his righteousness tolerate the likes of you? Maybe he's familiar with this body that you stole instead. Hang on. My throat's getting a little bit scratchy. And stuff. His words were cruel and sinister. Every sentence seemed well-meaning on the surface, but was actually derogatory. Wei Wuxian couldn't bear with it any longer. Watch your language. Zhang Chang responded. I've never cared for such things. Don't you remember? Wei Wuxian mocked. Oh, right. Zhang Chang snorted. So, you think that you're qualified to make me watch my language? Do you still remember? Last time on Dafan Mountain, did you watch your language when talking to Jinling? Wei Wuxian's face stiffened. Having regained the upper hand in the conversation, Zhang Chang looked satisfied again. He sneered. I suppose that you didn't have a mother to teach you. Now, you really know where it hurts most, don't you? The person who caused Jinling to be criticized behind his back in such a way is nobody else but you. You're quite the forgetful old man, aren't you? Have you forgotten the things you said? The promises you made? And then do you still remember how his parents died? Wei Wuxian immediately raised his head. I haven't forgotten. It's just that. Yet he couldn't find the right words to put after it. Zhang Cheng interrupted. It's just what? You can't say it? Don't worry. You can go back to Lotus Pier and say your excuses while kneeling in front of my parents' graves. Wei Wuxian calmed himself down and searched as far as he could for a way out of the situation at hand. Although he had always dreamed of returning to Lotus Pier once more, he didn't want to go back to the tattered one nowadays. Suddenly, a series of hurried footsteps approached, and the door was pounded on loudly. Jinling shouted from outside, Uncle! Zhang Chang raised his voice. Didn't I tell you to stay where you were? Why did you come here? Jinling, Uncle, I have something really important to tell you. Zhang Chang, if there's something important, why didn't you speak up when I was scolding you? I didn't want to say it because you kept scolding me. Are you going to listen or not? If not, I'm just not going to say it, Jinling replied in an angry voice. Zhang Chang opened the door with a fuming look on his face. Tell me, then get out. As soon as the wooden door opened, Jinling stepped aside. He had changed to a new set of white uniform. I really did encounter something troublesome today. I think I might have run into Wen Ning. Zhang Cheng's brow twitched. With a hostile expression, he placed his hand on his sword at once. Where? When? Jinling told him. It was this afternoon. There was a worn-down house about a dozen miles south of here. I went because I heard that something strange had happened there, but who could have guessed that there was a fierce corpse horde hiding inside? Jinling's words sounded quite believable. However, in Wei Wuxian's ears, all those sentences were nonsense. He knew precisely where Jinling was this afternoon. Moreover, if Wen Ning hid himself, unless he summoned him on purpose, there'd be no way that a junior would find him so easily. Zhang Cheng, why didn't you say so earlier, Jinling? I wasn't certain. The corpse moved at a really fast speed and ran away as soon as I entered. I only saw a blurry figure, but I heard the chain noises he made on Dafan Mountain, which is why I suspect that it might have been him. If you didn't scold me like that, I would have told you right after I came back. If he ran away and you can't catch him, it's because of your bad temper, not me. He still wanted to peek inside, but Zhang Chang was so angry that he slammed the door right in front of his face. Through the closed door, Zhang Chang shouted, I'll deal with you later. Get lost. Jinling replied with an "Oh," and his footsteps faded into the distance. Zhang Chang turned around. Wei Wuxian immediately pulled a mixed expression of, I'm so shocked. My secret has been disclosed, and what do I do now that Wen Ning has been found? Jinling was actually quite clever. Knowing that Zhang Chang hated Wen Ning more than anything else, he made up such a smooth lie with the previous knowledge that had Zhang Chang knew that the Yiling Patriarch and the Ghost General often appeared together, so he already suspected that Wen Ning was in the area. Having heard that Jinling's words, he was already mostly convinced, and Wei Wuxian's expression convinced him even further. On top of that, he burst into fury whenever he heard the mention of Wen Ning's name. With his eyes blinded by wrath, how could he have doubted? The hostility that built in his chest was almost making him explode. He flicked his whip, hitting the ground beside Wei Wuxian, and spoke through clenched teeth. You really take this obeying dog of yours everywhere, don't you? Wei Wuxian spoke. He's been dead since a long time ago, and I've died once as well. What else do you want? Wei Wuxian pointed the whip at him. So what? My hatred would persist even if he dies thousands of times. He didn't perish back then. Very well. I shall destroy him today with my own hands. I'm gonna burn him right now and scatter his ashes right in front of your face. He slammed the door shut behind him and walked toward the main hall, ordering Jinling, "You keep a close eye on him. Don't believe or listen to anything he says. Don't let him make a sound. If he dares to whistle or play his flute, block his mouth first. If it doesn't work, just slice off his hand or cut out his tongue." Wei Wuxian knew that Jiang Chang spoke these words especially for him to hear, threatening him against doing anything. The reason why Jiang Chang didn't bring him along was so that he didn't use the opportunity to control Wen Ning. Jinling replied in a nonchalant tone, "I know, of course I'll be able to watch him. Uncle, why did you shut yourself inside along with that damn cut sleeve? What did he do this time?" Jiang Chang answered, "This isn't a question you should ask. Remember to watch him properly. If I return to see that he disappeared, I'll break your leg for sure." After a few more questions about the exact location, he left with half of the disciples and went to chase the non-existent Wen Ning. After some time of waiting, Jinling's arrogant voice traveled through. "You go and stand over there. You go wait on the side. All of you go wait in the front main entrance. I'm going to go inside and meet him." None of the disciples dared to disobey. After a short while, the door had opened again, and Jinling stuck his head inside. Eyes darting around the room, Wei Wuxian sat up straight. Jinling put a finger in front of his lips, walked in quietly, and put his hand on Zidian, and then whispered. Zidian could only work if it recognized its owner. Jiang Chang had probably allowed it to recognize Jin Ling. The electric currents. I don't remember this. Jin Ling wearing Zidian? That's amazing. I might draw this just so that I can draw Jinling with Zidian because I don't remember him getting to wear Zidian. That's amazing. Okay, anyways. Zidian could only work if it's recognized its owner. Jiang Chang had probably allowed it to recognize Jinling. The electric currents went out at once, and it transferred into a silver ring embedded with a purple crystal lying on top of Jinling's fair-colored palms. So so in the novel, it's just a silver ring with a purple jewel. It is nothing like the ring that everyone uses from the Donghua. That's not actually what it looks like. Interesting. Good to know. Fun facts. Okay. Jinling said in a quiet voice, "Let's go." After the senseless orders, the Yunmeng Zheng's disciples had been scattered all over the place. The two stealthily flipped open the window and over the walls. Having left the shop, they sprinted without making any noise. As they entered a forest, Wei Wuxian heard something strange coming from behind them. Turning around, he was almost scared to death. "Why is it coming along as well? Tell it to go away!" Jinling whistled twice, and the dog rolled out its long tongue, whimpering softly. Its pointy ears twitched, and it ran away disheartenedly. Jinling sneered in contempt. Such a loser. Fairy never bites. It just looks scary. It's a spiritual dog trained to only bite evil beings. Do you really think that it's just a regular dog? Wei Wuxian, hold on. What did you call it? Fairy. Its name. You called a dog something like this? Janling replied assuredly. "What's wrong with this name? When it was younger, it was called Little Fairy. Now that it grew up, I can't keep calling it that." Wei Wuxian refused. No, no, no. The point isn't whether it's little or not. Who in the world taught you such a way of naming? Without a doubt, it must have been his uncle. In the past, Jiang Chang had also had a few puppies. The names he chose were things like Jasmine, Princess, Love, and so on, which sounded like the names of expensive girls in brothels. Jinling continued. Wow, that you sound like a hooker, apparently. True men don't care for such trifles. Why are you stressing over such details? Okay, stop. Now that you offended my uncle, you're already half dead. Now I'm letting you go. We're even. Wei Wuxian asked, "Do you know why your uncle wants me?" Jinling answered, "Yeah, he believes that you're Wei Wuxian." Wei Wuxian thought, this time it's not merely suspect anymore. He's got the right person, he asked again. "Then what about you? Don't you suspect it as well?" Jinling, "It's not the first time that my uncle did such a thing. He's never let any of them go, even if it was possible that he got the wrong one. But if Zidian couldn't draw out your spirit, I'm going to trust that. Besides, I'm gonna trust that you're not. Besides, he wasn't a cut sleeve, but you dared to harass. With a disgusted look, he stopped before mentioning who Wei Wuxian harassed and made a fanning gesture as if he was shooing away flies. Anyway, from now on, you have nothing to do with the Lanling Jin sect anymore. If you're gonna go at it again, don't find anyone from my sect, or else I won't let you off. Having finished speaking, Jinling spun around to leave. After walking a few steps, he turned to him again. What are you doing still standing there? Go. Are you waiting for my uncle to come and get you? Let me tell you, don't you think that I'll be grateful just because you saved me? Don't expect me to say anything cringeworthy either. Bro, that's cringe. He really acts like Gen Z. That's amazing. Anyways, Wei Wuxian put his hands behind his back and walked over. Young man, there are two cringeworthy phrases in one's life that must be said no matter what. Jinling asked, which two? Wei Wuxian replied, thank you, and I'm sorry. Jinling taunted, what can anybody do to me if I don't say them? Wei Wuxian, Sunday, you'll say those words in tears. Jinling made a spitting noise just as Wei Wuxian suddenly spoke to him. I'm sorry. Jinling paused. What? Wei Wuxian, I'm sorry for the words I said to you on Dafan Mountain. It wasn't the first time that Jinling was told that he had no mother to teach him, but it was the first time someone apologized to him in such a serious way, with an I'm sorry shoved right into his face. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a bit uneasy. He wildly waved his arms around. It's nothing. You weren't the first person to say so, anyways. It's true that I had no mother to teach me. However, I won't be inferior to anyone because of this. In fact, I'm going to open your eyes and make you see that I'm a lot stronger than all of you. Wei Wuxian smiled. As he was about to speak, his expression suddenly changed. Zhang Chang? Zhang Chang! You. Jinling was already feeling guilty since he stole Zidian and let Wei Wuxian go. Hearing the name, he rolled around to look. Using the chance, Wei Wuxian hit Jinling's neck, forming a blade with his hand. He laid Jinling flat on the ground, rolled up the bottom of his trousers, and examined his curse mark on his leg. He tried a few methods, but none of them made it fade. After a moment, he sighed, knowing that it'd be difficult. However, although there were some curse marks that were unable to remove, he could transfer them to his own body. Jinling slowly woke up after a while, putting his hand to his neck. Some pain could still be felt. He was so angry that he jumped up and unsheathed his sword at once. How dare you hit me? My uncle hadn't even hit me before. Wei Wuxian exclaimed. Really? Doesn't he say that he'll break your legs all the time? Jinling fumed. He's only saying that. You damn cut sleeve. What on earth do you want? Wei Wuxian covered his face and shouted toward behind Jinling. Ah, Han Jun! Jinling was more scared of Lan Wangji than he was of his uncle. After all, his uncle was from his own clan, but Han Jun was from someone else's. Frightened, he fled at once, shouting as he ran, You damn cut sleeve! Disgusting maniac! I'll remember you! This isn't over yet! Behind him, Wei Wuxian laughed so hard that he couldn't breathe. After Jinling disappeared into the distance, his chest itched in a stuffy way, and he finally managed to stop the laughter after a while of coughing. Only then did he have time to think. Wei Wuxian was taken home by Jiang Fengmen when he was 9. Oh, he was 9? I think I knew that, but I forgot, and I've been thinking it was 7. He was 9 by the time he was taken in. Okay. Most of his memories from back then were already blurred, yet Jinling's mother, Jiang Yanli, remembered all of them, and even told him quite a few. She said that after his father heard the news that both his parents died in battle, he had always dedicated himself to finding the child that these past friends left behind. After searching for a while, he finally found the child in Yiling. Oh. The first time they met, Wei Wuxian was kneeling on the ground, eating the fruit peels that somebody tossed on the ground. Yiling's winter and spring were quite cold, yet the child only wore thin layers. His knees were already tattered, and on his feet were two different shoes that didn't fit at all. He was looking down, searching for fruit peels. Jiang Fengmen called him, and still remembering that there was a Ying in his name, so he lifted his head. Although his cheeks were both red and chapped from the cold, he still wore a smile. Jiang Yanli said that he was born with a smiling look. No matter what unfortunate thing happened, he wouldn't cling to them. No matter what situation he was in, he would be happy. Although it sounded a bit heartless, it really wasn't bad. Jiang Fengmen fed him a piece of melon, and he let Jiang Fengmen carry him back. Back then, Jiang Chang was also around 8 or 9. He kept a few puppies to play with him in the Lotus Pier, Finding out that Wei Wuxian was extremely scared of dogs, Zhang Fengmen suggested for Zhang Tong to send the dogs away. Zhang Chang was really unwilling. After throwing a tantrum of breaking things, pouting, and bawling his eyes out, he finally sent the dogs away. Although because of this he held hostility towards Wei Wuxian for a long time, after the two grew familiar, they had begun to cause mischief together. Whenever he ran into dogs, Zheng Chang would always chase them away, and then have a good laugh at Wei Wuxian, who jumped onto a tree. He had always thought that Zheng Chang would be on his side, and Lan Wangji would be opposite to him. He never imagined that things would turn out so differently. Wei Wuxian walked towards the rendezvous point that he and Lan Wangji were supposed to meet at. Nobody walked among the sparse lights that flickered in the night without having to look around. The white robed figure stood at the end of the street, standing motionless with his head hung low. Before Wei Wuxian made any sound, Lan Wangji looked up and saw him. After some hesitation, he walked over with a darkened expression. Wei Wuxian didn't know why, but he involuntarily took a step backward. He could almost see scarlet streaks of blood by the corner of Lan Wangji's eyes, and he had to admit, Lan Wangji's face really did look quite scary. Translator's note: surprise, there are none. That's nice. Okay. What happens? Let me skip and see where this chapter ends up. How long has it been now? Hour and a half. I will try to get through them talking to Nihai Song, and then maybe end after just before the first drinking scene. Okay. However, having taken only one step back, his ankle twisted and he seemed as if he collapsed on the ground. With a strange change in expression, Lan Wangji hurried over and tightly gripped his wrist like what he did last time back in Dafan Mountain. After a while, Wei Wuxian had been steadied. Lan Wangji knelt down on one knee to examine his leg. Wei Wuxian was rather shocked. No, Han Guangjun, you don't have to do this. Lan Wangji raised his head slightly. The pair of light-colored eyes bore into him and then looked down again and continued to roll up the leg of his trousers. Still under his grip, Wei Wuxian could do nothing except to look up at the sky. His entire leg was covered with the black bruise of the curse mark. After staring at it for a while, Lan Wangji spoke in a bitter voice. I only left for a few hours. Wei Wuxian shrugged. A few hours is a long time. Anything could have happened. There, straighten up. He backhandedly pulled Lan Wangji up. It's only the average curse mark. We can just kill it when it comes to find me. Han Guangjun, you'll need to help me. If you don't, I won't be able to handle it. Have you caught the person? Is it him? Where is he now? Lan Wangji looked in the direction of a signboard that stood in front of a shop far down the street. Wei Wuxian continued, let's deal with the castle issue first. Then walked towards the shop. He didn't notice it before, but his leg felt a bit numb, possibly from Zidian. It was a good thing that Jiang Cheng controlled Zidian's force, that it wasn't made into a scorched corpse, and that had been struck by lightning. Lan Wangji stood behind him when he suddenly called out, Wei Ying. Wei Wuxian's figure paused. A second later, he pretended as if he didn't hear the name and answered, What? Lan Wangji, this was transferred from Jing's body, was it not? It was a question. It wasn't a question, but a statement. Wei Wuxian didn't say anything. Lan Wangji spoke again. You met with Jiang Wanyin. It wasn't hard to figure out due to the mark that Zidian left on the top of the curse mark. Wei Wuxian turned around. As long as both of us are alive in this world, we'd meet for sure sooner or later. Lan Wangji, do not go. Wei Wuxian, if I don't go, how am I supposed to leave? Are you going to carry me on your back or something? Lan Wangji looked at him in silence. Wei Wuxian's smile froze on his face, just as a foreboding feeling crossed his mind. If it were the Lanchan from back then, he would have definitely been shocked speechless by these words, and either leave with a cold face or completely ignore him. However, it'd be hard to say whether the Lanchan now would respond. As he had expected, hearing these words, Lan Wangji walked in front of him as if he was really going to bend down and kneel and carry Wei Wuxian on his back. Despite his honorable status, shock came upon Wei Wuxian once more. Stop, I wasn't being serious. It's only numb because I got hit by Zidian a few times. Not that it broke. It'd be bad for a full-grown man like me to be carried on someone else's back. Lan Wangji asked, Would it look bad? Wei Wuxian replied, Would it look good? After a moment of silence, Lan Wangji responded, But you have also carried me on your back before. Wei Wuxian, did such a thing ever happen? Why don't I remember? Lan Wangji answered in an indifferent tone, You never remember such things. Wow, that's a little bit of passive aggression, I think, huh? Wait, Bushin, everyone says that I have a bad memory. Alright, fine. Anyways, I'm not letting you carry me on your back, Lanoji. Are you sure? Wei Wuxian replied in a resolute manner. I'm sure. The two stayed silent for a while. Suddenly, one of Lan Wangji's arms wrapped around his back, and as Lan Wangji bent down slightly, another went toward the back of his knees. Wei Wuxian was both shorter and lighter than him, therefore he was picked up easily. His body was embraced in a pair of firm arms. Wei Wuxian didn't expect his answer to lead to this at all. Both in his past and current lives, it was the first time that he'd ever been treated like this by anyone. He was horrified. Lan Shan! Carrying him, Lan Wangji both walked and replied to him steadily, You said that you didn't want to be carried on my back, Wei Wuxian. I didn't say that I wanted to be carried like this either. Unfortunately, it was already late into the night. There weren't any people walking the street, so it wasn't that embarrassing. Wei Wuxian wasn't someone with a thin face either. Having been carried for a few steps, he quickly relaxed. He grinned as he played with the front of Lan Wangxi's clothes, pretending to tug at it. So, you want to see whose face is thicker? Oh, goodness. You are welcome for my reading. I'm gonna take a drink. The cold scent of sandalwood enveloped him. Without paying him attention, Lanoiji looked straight forward and made no reaction, maintaining the righteousness, serious expression. Seeing that nothing could affect him, Wei Wuxian thought to himself as he continued to play with Lanoiji's clothes. It seemed that Lan Shan's heart for revenge is actually quite strong. He's going to make me pay for however many times I teased him in the past and take the fun away. This is such a this is such an improvement. Not only has his level of cultivation improved, his face also improved. Wei Wuxian asked, Lanshan, you've known that it was me ever since we were at Dafan Mountain, right? Lan Wangji, yes. Wei Wuxian wondered, how could you tell? Lan Wangji looked down. You want to know? Wei Wuxian declared, yes. Lan Wangji, you told me yourself. Wei Wuxian, myself? Because of Jinling? Because I summoned Wenning? None of these, right? It seemed as if something had sent ripples through Lanoichi's eyes, yet the slight waves faded immediately and his eyes were still a pool of water again. He spoke in a serious tone. Think. Wei Wuxian replied, I only asked you because I can't think of the reason. This time, no matter how he asked, Lanoichi refused to answer. With Wei Wuxian in his arms, he stepped into an inn. Aside from the front desk clerk, who choked on some water, none of the bystanders acted strangely. They arrived at the door of the room. Wei Wuxian said, Okay, we're here. Time for you to let me down. You don't have a third hand to open the door. Before he finished his words, Lanoichi did something that was extremely impolite. It was possibly the first time in his whole life that he'd ever done such a rude act. Carrying away Wuxian, he kicked the door open. The two doors sprung open, and the person who sat nervously inside instantly wailed, Han Guangjun, I don't know, I... After he realized what posture the two of them came inside, he stared blankly at them, barely managing to finish the sentence. I really don't know. It really was the head shaker. Acting as if he didn't see anything, Lan Wangji carried Wei Wuxian inside and put him on the bamboo mat. Ni Huaisang seemed as if he couldn't bear to look at the scene and immediately opened his fan, covering his face with it. Wei Wuxian walked around the fan to examine him. Even after so many years, his past classmate didn't bear any changes. He looked the same as he did back then. Although he was born with an elegant, attractive face, his expression made him seem as if anyone could do anything to him. His stylish clothes showed a fine taste in clothing, which meant that he definitely put plenty of thought into it. Compared to the leader of a sect, he further resembled a wealthy idler. Even if he wore an imperial robe, he wouldn't seem like a prince. Even if he held a saber, he wouldn't seem like a cultivator. He denied it no matter what. So Lan Wangji put the piece of fabric that the spiritual dog had bitten off onto the table. Nihoi Song felt for his sleeve that lacked a certain scrap, then replied miserably, I just happened to pass by. I really don't know anything. Wei Wuxian, if you don't know, I'll talk. As you listen to me, maybe you'll figure out that you do know some things after all. Nihai Song opened and closed his mouth a few times, unable to provide a response. Wei Wuxian proceeded. In the area of Qinghe Jinlu Ridge, there have been rumors of a man-eating ridge and man-eating castle, but there haven't been any actual victims, which is why it's mere hearsay. The hearsay would make it so that normal people avoided Qinglu Ridge. Thus, its real function is to act as a defense line. The first one, in fact. If there's a first, there must also be... Who's talking? Is this still Wei Wuxian talking? I think so. If there's a first, there must be a second. The second line of defense is the walking corpses on the Jinlu Ridge. Even if someone who's not scared of many castle rumors, either purposely or accidentally went inside the ridge, after they see the walking dead, they will definitely flee. However, these walking corpses are small in number and weak in terms of power, so they wouldn't cause any real harm. The third defense line is the maze array by the stone castle. The first two are to defend against normal people. This one is only to defend against cultivators, but nevertheless, it only works against average cultivators. If a cultivator who holds a spiritual weapon or dog and specializes in maze arrays comes, or a cultivator as powerful as Hangguang Jun, this defense line will have to be broken. The three defense measures exist in order to protect the stone castle of Shinlu Ridge to remain hidden from the public. The identity of the people who built the stone castle is quite clear. This is the Nisek's area. Aside from the Nisek, nobody else is capable of easily getting up to these three obstacles in Shinkai, and, moreover, you happen to appear near the stone castle and leave evidence. What exactly is Chingheni's sect of building the man-eating castle on the Jinlu Ridge? Where did the corpses in the wall come from? Were they eaten? Sect Leader Ni, if you don't give us a proper explanation here, I'm afraid that after the secret is exposed, all of the sects and clans come here to interrogate you. When the time comes, even if you don't want to explain things, there won't be anyone to listen to or believe in you. Nihai Song replied desperately as if he had given up. It isn't a man-eating castle at all. It's just my sect's ancestral burial ground. Wei Wuxian questioned. Ancestral burial ground? Whose ancestral burial ground buries sabers instead of corpses? Nihar-san responded with a sullen face. Jun, before I explain things, can you promise me something? Seeing that our two sects have known each other for long and that our brothers have sworn, no matter what I say after this, you and the one beside you must not tell anyone. If the secret is exposed in the future, I'd greatly appreciate if the two of you could say a few good things as witnesses. You've always been true to your words. If you promise, I'll believe you. Lan Wangji, as you wish. Wei Wuxian asked. You said that it's not a man-eating castle after all, so does that mean that it hasn't eaten anyone? Nihua-san clenched his teeth and answered obediently. It has. Wei Wuxian. Wow. Nihua-san immediately added, but it was only once, and it wasn't the fault of our sect. It was dozens of years ago. The rumors of the Manning Castle and Shinlu Ridge also started then. I only fanned the flames and magnified the rumors. Wei Ying, in case anyone's forgotten, that's Wei Wuxian's name. Yup. Okay. Lan Wangji, the details, please. Sitting down, his polite words were almost as powerful as a threat. Nihoi Song finally started his explanation. He began, Guangjun, you know that we, the Ni sect, are different from other sects, because our sect's founder was a butcher. The other sects cultivate using swords, while our sect, on the other hand, cultivates using sabers. This was known by everyone and was by no means a secret. Even the motive of the Chihei Ni sect was the head of a beast that resembled a dog or a pig. It does not resemble a dog. It's more like a bull, like a cow. Anyways, Nihoi-san continued, because our cultivation method was different from those of other sects and our founder was originally a butcher, it was only natural for blood to be shed. The sabers of our past sect leaders were all heavy with hostile energy and killing intent. Almost every single sect leader met a sudden death from a chi deviation explosion, and their irritable tempers had also had a lot to do with this. Wei Wuxian raised a brow. Now this is getting quite close to demonic cultivation. Nihua-san quickly defended, it's different! Demonic cultivation is only demonic cultivation because it uses human lives, but instead of human lives, our sex sabers use the lives of those evil spirits and beasts. Throughout their whole lives, they've been killing such things, so they aren't able to kill them any longer. They'd cause trouble and disrupt the sect. A saber spirit only deems one person as its master, allowing nobody else to use it. It's not like we later generations can melt the sabers. First, it'd be disrespectful to the ancestors. Second, it's possible that even melting them won't solve the problem. Wei Wuxian commented, quite full of themselves, aren't they? Nihua-san, indeed. The sabers who fought and cultivated alongside our ancestors are indeed a position to be full of themselves. He continued, as the generations went on, the sect leaders had higher levels of cultivation, and the problem also worsened. That is, until the sixth sect leader came up with a solution, Wei Wuxian asked. To build the man-eating castle? Nihai sung, no, Although they are connected, this solution only appeared later. The sixth sect leader did this. He built two coffins for his father's and his grandfather's sabers and then dug a tomb. Inside the tomb, instead of any valuable treasures, he put hundreds of corpses that were about to transform. Lanwenji frowned slightly, and Hippo-san immediately blurted, Ongoing June, I can explain. They weren't killed by our sex peoples. We had to gather them from place to place. We also bought a bunch of them at high prices. The sixth sex leader said that if the saber spirits wanted to fight with evil beings, then give them evil beings for them to fight forever. The pre-transformed corpses were buried along with the sword-containing coffins. They were like burial goods for the saber spirits. The saber spirits would suppress the transformation of the corpses, and at the same time, the corpses could calm the sword spirits' desire and fury. The situation would go on as if they were two sides keeping each other in check. Only by this method did the future generations attain peace. Wei Wuxian asked again. Then why was such a stone castle built afterwards? Why were the corpses buried inside the walls? And didn't you say that it did eat a few people? Nihoi-san answered, These questions are actually the same question. I guess you could say that it did eat people, but it wasn't on purpose. Our sixth sect leader constructed this saber tomb in such a way that it looked like the average tomb, and the future generations followed how he did it, but about 50 years ago, the tomb was dug up by some grave robbers. Wei Wuxian made an "oh" sound, and he silently exclaimed, What a case of waking the sleeping lion. Nihoi-san, for an event as big as building a tomb, no matter how cautious and discreet one can be, it's impossible for everything to stay hidden. The grave robbers pried into the matter and firmly believed that there was a huge tomb from past dynasties in the Jingli Ridge. They planned this out a long time ago and came prepared. Among the unruly group of people, there were actually one or two who had true skills, allowing the mob to locate the orientation and pass the maze array and find our saber tomb. They've seen enough dead people in their lives, so after digging a hole and entering the tomb, they weren't really scared of the corpses, but they searched everywhere for golden treasures, breathing next to the corpses, and even worse, they were youthful men in the prime of their lives, filled with yang energy. Remember, the corpses lying inside were all about to transform. It wasn't hard to figure out what happened. 10 or so corpses transformed immediately. However, these grave robbers weren't average people. With a complete set of tools, they actually managed to somehow kill the walking corpses once more. After the fight, there was flesh and blood all over the ground. They finally realized that the tomb was dangerous and got ready to leave, but just as they were leaving, they got eaten. The number of corpses put in the tomb was strictly controlled. It was neither more nor less, just enough to be out of balance with the saber spirits. It would have been fine if the grave robbers caused just the transformation, since after they left, the saber spirits would have suppressed the transformation again. But with the chaos they caused, the corpses were all cut to pieces, and so there were suddenly a few less corpses than it began with. For the saber tomb to ensure that there were enough corpses and sword spirits to suppress each other, it could only close itself off and trap them inside the tomb for the group to make up for the shortage that they had caused. Since the saber tomb was destroyed, the sect leader at that time began to think of different methods. He chose another spot on the Jinglu Ridge and built a saber hall instead of a saber tomb, in case grave robbers came again. He hid the corpses inside the walls in disguise. The sword in the hall was rumored man-eating castle. When the grave robbers came to Chinke, they pretended to be hunters. They never returned after going to Jinglu Ridge and left no corpses behind, so people started to say that they were devoured by a monster in the ridge. Then, after the stone castles were built, before the new maze array was set up, a passerby accidentally came upon it. Luckily, no doors were built on the castle, so they couldn't venture inside, but after leaving the ridge, he told everyone that there were a group of strange white castles in the Jinlu Ridge, and that the man-eating monster must have dwelled in there. We thought that it would be beneficial for the rumors to spread so that nobody dared to go near the area, so we exaggerated a bit and created the legend of the man-eating castle, but it really can eat humans. Song took out a handkerchief and a white stone the size of garlic from within his sleeves. He used the handkerchief to wipe away sweat and passed the white stone over. The two of you can take a look at this. Wei Wuxian took the stone. Having a better look at it, he found something white that protruded from the stone. It looked like the bone of a human's finger. He immediately realized what was going on. Nihoi-san finished wiping the sweat and continued. That young Mr. Jin somehow made an explosion that created a hole in the wall. To be able to break such a thick wall, that must have meant that he also carried a lot of spiritual tools on him, but wait, that's not the point. What I'm saying is, the area that he blew up happened to be the earliest saber hall we built in the Jinlu Ridge. Back then, we didn't think of using stone bricks on both sides and filling the center with soil to prevent yang energy from going in so that they can't easily transform. Well, we simply put the corpses inside, so when young Master Jin made the opening, he didn't realize that he had also destroyed a skeleton that was buried inside. Before long, he was also sucked up into the walls of the castle in place of the corpse that he blew up. Every so often, I go to the Jinlu Ridge to check things out. Today, when I went, I found this. Just as I picked up the stone, a dog came after me. Ah, the Sword Hall is pretty much our ancestral tomb. The more Nihai Song talked, the more miserable he felt. Most cultivators know that this is our area, so they never night hunt around Qinghai. Who knew that? Who knew that he had such bad luck? First, the disobedient Jinling had set his mind on Jinlu Ridge, and then the two in search of where the ghost hand had pointed. Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian came as well. He spoke again. Han Guangjun, and you. I already said that you mustn't. Han Guangjun, and you. I already said that you mustn't tell anyone else about this, or else. Or else, seeing from Qinghei Nisek's half-dead situation right now, if this was released to the public, Nihai-san would become a sinner, a disgrace to his ancestors, even if he died. It would be only natural that he'd rather be the secret laughingstock of the sects instead of focusing on cultivation or daring to sharpen his saber's blade. If his cultivation reached a certain level, he would gradually become more irritable and, in the end, die with anger in the same way that his brother and ancestors had died. Even after his death, his sword would haunt the living and disrupt the peace of his whole sect. If so, being a worthless person seemed even better. Just get a normal sword. Just what about using a normal sword? What about that? Hmm? It was quite an unsolvable problem. Ever since the founder of the Nice sect had become this same, surely it didn't mean that all future generations would have to deny the path and basis on that the founder forged. All the cultivation sects were forged in different areas, similar to how the Gusulan sect was skilled at music. The violence and power of Qinghe Ni sect's sabers were how it outshone the other sects. If it abandoned its founder's ideal and started anew in search of a different path, who knew how many years it would take, or if it would even succeed or not? Moreover, Nihai Song would never dare to betray the Ni sect and cultivate a different path. Because of this, his only choice was to be a good for nothing. Okay. If he weren't a sect leader in his whole life and spent his whole life the same way he did back in Cloud Recesses, fooling around for entire days, he'd certainly be in a more comfortable position than he was now. But since his brother had passed away already, no matter how hard it was for him, he'd still have to take the responsibility on his shoulders and stumble forward. Niha Song laughed after telling them again and again not to say anything, and Wei Wuxian blanked out for a while. Suddenly he felt Lan Wangji walk over. Lan Wangji kneeled with a single leg in front of him and then proceeded to roll up his trousers with an earnest face. Okay. Wait. Um. Then rolled up his trousers with an earnest face. He hurriedly spoke again. Wait, again? Lan Wangji will remove the curse mark first. Within one day, Han Guangjun had kneeled in such a way so many times in front of him. Although Lan Wangji looked quite serious, he really couldn't bear to look at the scene. Wei Wuxian spoke. I'll do it myself. Quickly rolling up the trouser legs, he could see that the curse mark was covered the entire lower half of his leg, past his knees, and climbed onto the upper half. Wei Wuxian took a glance at it. It's already past my thighs. Lonongji turned his head away and did not answer. Wei Wuxian found it quite odd. Lachan? Um, okay. Should I read this chapter? Yes. I think this will be a good ending spot. Hang on. Is the next chapter going to be a different part? Yes, it is. Okay. Finish with Malice Part 1. That seems like a good... Or Malice Part 5. Before it gets to Part 1 of the next section. This is a good end spot after this chapter. Okay. Only then did Lan Wangji turn to the front again, gaze still slightly off to the side. Seeing this, Wei Wuxian blinked his eyes, wanting to make fun of him for some reason. Just as he was about to tease Lan Wangji, a shattering sound suddenly came back by the desk. They both stood up to look. The teacups and teapot broke to pieces on the ground. A Tiankun pouch lay amid the white shards of the porcelain and the tea that spilled out. The surface of the bag went up and down as if something was trapped inside or eager to come out. Although the Tiankun pouch was only about the size of a fist, it was specifically made to store things. Complex incantations were sewn into both the inside and the outside, adding a few more sealing layers. Lan Wangji originally sealed the arm inside the pouch and put it under a teacup on the table. Now, seeing its agitation, they finally remembered that it was time to perform rest. If not for the short nightly duets they performed to calm it, no matter how strong the Jankun's pouch power of suppression was, it couldn't trap the ghost hand alone. Wei Wuxian felt for the bamboo flute that had been by his waist, but he found nothing. Turning around, he saw that Lan Wangji already had the flute in his hands. Lan Wangji's head tilted slightly downward. He only handed the flute back after carving on it for a while in a dedicated manner. Taking the flute back, Wei Wuxian noticed that after it had been adjusted, even rough details such as finger holes were much finer. Lan Wangji, play it properly. Remembering the horrible duet they played in the Mishi that angered Lan Shiren to the point of waking up from a coma and fainting again, Wei Wuxian laughed so hard that he almost fell on the ground, thinking to himself, it must have been tough for him these few days, tolerating this for so long. He stopped himself from fooling around any longer, and with a serious expression raised the flute to his lips. However, having only played a few notes, the Jenkin pouch suddenly multiplied in size and stood upright on the ground. A note cracked with a tut. Wei Wuxian commented, "Has it gotten has it gotten too used to the bad playing? I'm playing properly for once, and it doesn't like it." As if replying him, the Jenkin pouch flung itself at Wei Wuxian. Lan Wangji's melody took a sharp turn, one with smooth gesture, and seven strings vibrated at once, emitting a noise so strong that it almost seemed like an avalanche. After the sound, the Janku pouch fell backward on the ground again, as if nothing had happened. Wei Wuxian continued playing. Lan Wangji's wrist softened, following the tune of rest. The Gichin's melody came calm once more and gradually blended with the flutes. The song finished, and the Janku pouch finally shrunk back to the size it had been, remaining motionless. Wei Wuxian stuck the flute back by his waist. In these few days, it never looked as impatient as this before. It seems as if it was provoked by something. Lan Wangji nodded and turned to him. And it was something on you. Wei Wuxian immediately looked down toward himself. Today there was only one thing on him different, the curse mark that had been transferred to him from Jinling. Jinling's curse mark was left on him at the stone castles of Jinlu Ridge. Seeing how strongly the ghost hand reacted to the curse mark, did it mean that Wei Wuxian, do you mean that another part of his body might be within the walls of the Nisak Saber Hall? Hang on a second. How long does this chapter say it is? Only 11 minutes. Cool. Okay. On the next morning, the two departed again, heading back to Jinlu Ridge. Yesterday, Nikai-san had been caught and confessed to everything. Over the night, he called for all of the sect's reliable disciples to clean up the mess that the intruders created. When Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji came over, a piece of the wall that Wei Wuxian had dug Jingling out of had just been filled in, and a new corpse was already being put inside. Watching the white bricks stack up neatly, he wiped some of the sweat off his brows. However, he turned around, his legs almost gave out. He pulled a cringing smile onto his face. Gunjun, and you. Wei Wuxian waved his hands and grinned. Sec Leader Ni, you're building the walls? Ni Hassan wiped away sweat with his handkerchief, rubbing so many times that he almost took a layer of skin away. Yes, yes. Wei Wuxian said in a voice filled with much empathy and a dash of timidity. My apologies. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience, but you might need to build the walls again afterwards. Ni Hassan, yes, yes. Wait, what? Before he could finish his sentence, Bishan unsheathed. Niha-san gaped as he watched the brick wall, which he repaired mere moments ago, crack open again. Destruction was always easier than restoration. Wei Wuxian's speed at taking bricks down was countless times faster than their speed at stacking bricks. Niha-san trembled as he tightly gripped his fan, feeling that so wrong that he was on the verge of bursting into tears. Yet, since Han Guangjun stood on the side and commenting nothing, he didn't dare to say anything either. After Lan Wangji explained the situation to him in a concise manner, he immediately swore to the heavens and earth. Nonsense! That's utter nonsense! The corpses that our Saber Hall uses are complete with limb attached. It's impossible for them to be some armless male corpse. If you don't believe me, I'll take apart the wall with you and prove my innocence. But afterwards, you must put them back as soon as possible without any delay. After all, this is our ancestral burial ground. After a few disciples of the Ni sect also joined them, now that there were other people doing the work, Wei Wuxian backed off and on the side, waiting for results. After an hour, the stone bricks on the wall that Jinling were had been buried in were mostly taken off. Some disciples put on face masks, where others swallowed red-colored pills so that the breathing in human energy didn't cause corpse transformations. Among the black dirt, an ashen hand or a vein laced foot sometimes poked out, in addition to a tangled, grimy hair plastered everywhere. Each and every male corpse was hastily cleaned and set row by row on the ground. The corpses came in all shapes and sizes, and some were already skeletons, some were in the process of rotting, and some were still quite fresh. However, every single one of them had a complete body. They didn't find a single male corpse that was missing a left arm. Nihot's song spoke warily. Taking apart one wall is enough, isn't it? Does it need to be taken down? Does it any more need to be taken down? Probably not, right? It was indeed enough. The curse mark on Jinling's body was extremely dark in color, so being that created it was most likely buried nearby him, and the range would definitely not exceed this wall. Wei Wuxian squatted down by a row of corpses. After pondering a few moments, he turned to Long Wen Ji. Should we get the Chankun pouch? Taking the left hand out of the Chankun pouch for it to identify the body on its own wouldn't be a bad idea. However, if it was too close to the other limbs of the corpse, it might be hard not to agitate it and trigger worse situations, and due to the abundance of dark energy in this special location, the level of danger multiplied. This was why they carefully chose to come during the daytime. Wei Wuxian shook his head and thought to himself, this doesn't mean that the arm doesn't belong to a man, does it? No, that'd be impossible. I can tell whether a hand belongs to a man or a woman at first sight. Then, would it mean that the owner has three arms? Just as he was about to laugh at his own thought, Lan Wangji spoke again. The legs. With his reminder, Wei Wuxian remembered. He looked over at the fact that the curse mark didn't spread any further than his legs, and he quickly called, take off the pants, take off the pants. Nihua Song was shocked to death. Why would you say such a shameful thing in front of Han Guangjun? Wei Wuxian responded, how is it shameful? We're all men. Anyways, help me take off the pants of the corpses. Only the male corpses. This has nothing to do with the female ones. As he spoke, he started reaching out towards the belt sashes of the corpses on the ground. It really was unfortunate for Nihai Song. He didn't expect that at all. After confessing everything today he needed to take off the corpse's pants right in front of the saber hall in front of his ancestors. Moreover, they were male corpses with a face full of tears. He thought that for sure after he died, he'd be slapped on the face by every ancestor in Qinghe Ni sect and end up injured so badly that he'd be handicapped even after he reincarnated. Luckily, Wei Wuxian's act was stopped by Lan Wangji. Just as Nihai Song was about to praise how worthy of his title Han Guangjun was, he heard him speak. I will do it. I will do it. Wei Wuxian, you'll do it? You're really going to do such a thing? The corners of Lan Wangji's brows seemed to be twitching slightly as if he was holding something back. He repeated, do not move, I will do it. This was the worst of all shocks Nihai Song experienced today. Of course, Lan Wangji wouldn't actually use his hands to pull down the corpse's pants. He simply used Bishan and lightly sliced open the clothing of the corpses, revealing the skin inside. This wasn't needed for some of the corpses, as the corpses were already quite ragged. A few moments later, he spoke up, I found it. Everyone immediately looked toward the ground. On both sides of the corpse, beside Lan Wangji's white boots, there were two light circular marks. The stitches of flesh-colored threads were tightly sewn around. There was a faint difference between the colors of the skin above and below the stitches. Clearly, the legs of the upper body and the corpse didn't belong to the same person. This was a pair of legs sewn on by someone. Nihua-sang was already shocked speechless. Wei Wuxian inquired, who chooses the corpses that the Ni sect uses for the Saber Hall? Nihua-sang replied with a glazed expression. Usually the past sect leaders chose and stored them when they were still alive. My brother passed away at an earlier age. He didn't have enough, so I also helped him choose. I kept whichever corpses that were complete with all limbs. I don't know about anything other than this. It'd be impossible. That's fucked up. Oh man, that's messed up, Mihai-song. Anyways, it'd be impossible to get anything out of him as to who exactly sneaked on the corpses. From the people who provided the corpses to the disciples of the Ni sect, there were countless suspects. It was likely that the truth would be revealed only if they found all body parts and pieced together the corpse and soul together. Having finally managed to separate the pair of legs and the other half of the male corpses, Wei Wuxian put them inside a new Jiankun pouch. As he spoke to Lan Wangji, looks like our dear friend here was cut to pieces. Not only that, the parts were scattered all over the place. One piece here, one piece there. Just how much hatred did the murderer hold for him? We can only hope that the pieces aren't too tiny. Although Nihua's song still said see you when they set off, judging from his frightened face, he most likely didn't want to see them ever again for the rest of his life. The two of left Jinglu Ridge and returned to the inn. Upon arriving at the relatively safe space, they took out the three limbs and started to examine them. As they expected, the pair of legs were the same color as the severed arm, and if they were put close together, they would react strongly, vibrating nonstop as if they wanted to join together. But the efforts were useless, as there was still one part of the body between them that was missing. It was a certain it was certain that they belonged to the same person. Aside from the fact that this was a man with a tall physique and long limbs, a muscular body, and a high level of cultivation, they knew nothing else about the mysterious corpse. Fortunately, the ghost hands soon pointed out where the next step would take place, the southwest. Following its directions, Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji made their way to Yuyang. Yes. Oh, what? All right. So, that's it. It's about 2 hours of reading for today. That's pretty good. It's about 3 average hours each time I read, and I'm only at chapter 28. I think there's 111 chapters, not including the extras. Whew. I don't know what I'm gonna do with some of the late chapters though, so that might be interesting. But yeah, okay. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do in terms of art. I think I might want to draw Jinling with Zidian because I don't remember that, and I love it. I think that's great that Jen Chung gave him Zidian to wear. Even though he was going after Wenning, wouldn't he want Zidian with him? But whatever, I guess. Yeah. Cool. Okay, stop recording now.